Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here a little bit early, but I hope you guys are all ready for the show today. The Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays for the JB show and Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. So you guys can go ahead and find me there and here every Tuesday at 3 p.m., even though we're a little early today. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps me out to be able to reach more people. So I appreciate that very much from all of you. Also, if you guys would like to, you guys can join my email list so you can subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever I go live, write any articles or upload any clips. And also, if you guys would like to, you guys can also get in touch with me through Bounty. This is also if you guys want to ask me any questions, you guys want a video response, or you would like for me to react to a particular video, then you guys have that there. You guys can go through Bounty at qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. So thank you so very much. So good to see all of you here today. I am keeping a keen eye on what's going on as far as the announcement from President Trump. We'll be covering that live for you today. Fortunately, it's at a time when I can actually go a little bit early in live without having to compete with other people. So thank you very much for joining me in that here. By the way, I'm also going to be checking on my phone because I would rather look at it on. I would much rather look at it on the White House website. If they are actually going to do it from the White House, they should. And so I don't think so. I don't see why the White House YouTube channel doesn't have a live. And also it's kind of weird because C-SPAN is also not doing live either. I checked, and for some reason, it's not there. Let me see here. They're going to be covering the president's remarks. Yeah, nothing set up in the live stream at all. Nothing set up to either C-SPAN or from the White House. So I will just be doing it straight from corporate media. We're going to have to stream it from there. But with that being said, I just want to thank you guys for showing up today as well for this. So while we're at it, we're going to say hello to a few people in the chat. Let me make sure I have this up as well, just in case, so I don't miss anything at all. Okay, so yeah. So we're going to say hello to a few people in the chat, and then we shall be waiting for the president. Hang on. Okay. So they're on a commercial break right now. I'm just making sure. So I'm just going to make sure I have this up and ready to go. Okay. All right. So yeah, right now, they are on commercial break, as we can tell. So we will be getting to President Trump's address in a few. We are live, folks, so that's one of the things that is going to be interesting about this. But while we're waiting for the president to come on and to have his words that he wants to speak with us, we're going to go into the chats and say our hellos to everybody. All right, so we have CBC voter coming in saying, happy Tuesday at JB. Good to see you, CBC voter. Nice to have you here. We have Kime coming in saying, wishing Trump the absolute worst. Yeah, Trump is, yeah. I mean, all presidents, it's like, have the day you deserve, right? We have Wet Camera Inc. saying peace. Good to see you, Wet Camera Inc. Cat coming in saying short eye Don is not my president. Oh man. Let me see. CBC voter says seagulls. Good to see you. Kime says maybe he had another. Oh no! You guys are brutal. Look, let me tell you something. If something happens to him, the tea is hot. I got my popcorn over there. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be looking at this like, what in the hell is going on? Don, what you do? All right, so let me see. Um, okay, so they're covering other stories right now while waiting. I don't understand why C-SPAN won't just do like cover it. Like the hell? Anyways, so we have SoCal Mikey says, "What's up, dude? First time watcher here. Hello, how you doing? Nice to meet you, and welcome to the channel as well. We will be covering that." And La Senora says, "JB, I just stopped antidepressants and I took them for 6 years, and I'm having horrible panic attacks. Listening to you really helps." Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? If listening to me helps, then I'm glad to be here for you. And look, um, focus on your breathing and have a cookie. You know, oatmeal raisin. See, oatmeal raisins are the good ones, right? Get the oatmeal raisin cookie and get a nice tall glass of milk. Now, if you're lactose intolerant, get something like almond or oat milk. You know what I mean? But go ahead, have a cookie. And like the Oracle said in the Matrix, you'll feel right as rain. All right. So, but I'm happy for you. Okay. Let me see. It will definitely get better. Zach coming in saying, "JB, you think the government stations will be the first on the scene for coverage? It's always weird when they do that. Now we aren't covering it. It's weird, right? And the crazy part is the White House YouTube is not even live streaming. Like they should be live right now. Like, like for real. Like I'm literally like going to like the White House YouTube and they're not streaming anything. They're not streaming the president's address. Like, is it like? And the crazy part is maybe it's the conspiracy in my head, but it feels like they're kind of doing this. They're not doing this prime time where everybody's watching. They're doing this more during business hours, but a lot of people are at work. It's like they want to have the be able to say, "Oh yeah, we said it," but then they want people to catch on later. You know, I don't know. It just feels weird that C-SPAN and the White House, of all places, are not streaming this. Right? Isn't that weird, y'all? I'm just flabbergasted by that. Okay. Amanda says, "JB, good to see you, Amanda." All right. Nice to have you here. All right. Okay. Wait, you're a raisinist? He hates raisins. Well, you know what? I guess we can't be friends. All right, we have Sean. I'm just kidding, Kime. Sean says, "Made it back home safely after flying back from San Francisco." Well, we're happy that you are back home safely. What in the hell is taking Donnie so long? It is 2:11. You said you were going to be live at 2 p.m. What are you going? Look, I should have known Donald Trump would be going by Florida time because we on time in Florida. We are not on time. And so, of course, Donnie, who has a home here in Florida, aka Mar-a-Lago, of course he ain't on time. Anyway, wait. Let me come in here. Oh boy. All right, we got a lot of people watching today. Cowboy Kitty, good to see you. All right. SoCal says they better cover the Epstein survivors tomorrow. Yeah, the Epstein survivors, man. They got to get into that. But they're not going to want to, because if they do, that's going to implicate a lot of people. Like, for instance, a lot of the Democrats will say, well, we want to hear from the Epstein survivors. It's like, now y'all want to hear from the Epstein survivors now that your guy's not in office. But do they really want to? It's like they're kind of playing it so that it's like, oh, well, we seem like we're, being opposition. But in reality, if you guys were actually opposition, you guys should have pushed for that when Biden was still in office, but you didn't. Right? And so now Trump is in office. Now you guys feel like suddenly you found some intestinal fortitude, and now you're like, well, we got to see these files. And then guess what? In about 4 years, if there's a Democrat that comes back into office in 28, then Republicans are going to go, well, you guys should release the Epstein files. And they have the opportunity to do it now. Right? It's weird. It's as if they're all on the same team and they're playing y'all. SoCal says maybe he's changing his diaper. Oh my God. Between him and Biden, you put them both together. You know what? I'm not gonna insult. I'm not gonna insult, because that means I'd be throwing somebody else under the bus. And I don't want to insult them by comparing them to Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Sorry. Fire Repo says, I don't H-word raisins. I just say, out of my oatmeal cookies, please, pretending like you're chocolate chips. Sounds good. SoCal, Mikey says, lock them all up. Yeah, lock them all up. Definitely. So let me see here. Still waiting. Part of me wants to start the first story, and then if Trump comes in, then I can stop. But then that means I'll have my attention kind of diverted in two different places. I'm not that smart. I ain't Sabby Sabs. My brain is not that big. She can do that. I can't. Plus, I don't have a producer. Let me see. Let me talk about this really quick, because I didn't have plans on talking about this, but I think it's important. While we were, some of us were enjoying Labor Day weekend, there was a 6.0 magnitude earthquake that hit Afghanistan over the weekend. I'm not sure if a lot of people know about that. The story is I think over 800 people died. And so I just thinking to myself, like, Afghanistan does not need this. That happened over the weekend. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up. Let me see. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can do this. Let me see. Oh, I have to stop. Okay. All right. Well, I'll do it this way. So this was a earthquake in Afghanistan that happened over the weekend. It says at least 800 killed as a 6.0 magnitude earthquake rocks Afghanistan. Officials said more than 1,300 people were injured in the quake, which struck outside the eastern city of Jalalabad, near the border with Pakistan. So here we go. I'm not sure if a lot of people knew about this earthquake, but a lot of times when earthquakes like this happen and this many people die, this happened on Sunday. I'm just going to say this. Because it's a brown country, black and brown countries, they don't get attention when big tragedies like this happen for the most part, especially if they're in West Asia, like Afghanistan. Because to them, it's like, oh, that many people died? Okay. Because the West is so used to massacring people in the global South, especially in places like West Asia and in Africa, that to them, a death is just another day at the office. And so whether it's a death by imperialism, colonialism, or just natural disasters, that's really just what is the soup du jour of empire. So let's get into this a little bit. So it says at least 800 people have been killed and more than 1,300 others injured in Afghanistan after a 6.0 magnitude earthquake hit the country, the Taliban officials said on Monday. The earthquake struck 17 miles from the eastern city of Jalalabad near the border with Pakistan at around midnight local time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern, Sunday, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. So basically, by the time I was finished with my stream on Sunday, by the time I was finished on my stream on Sunday on RBN, that's when the earthquake happened. Whew, it's bad. Okay. Because the earthquake hit a remote mountainous area, it will take time to get the exact information about human losses and damage to the infrastructure. So this is from Sharafat Zaman, the spokesperson for the Afghan Public Health Ministry. We have launched a massive rescue operation and mobilized hundreds of people to help people in the affected areas. Says he called for international aid to tackle the devastation, which left rescue teams battling to reach remote areas and loved ones searching desperately through rubble of homes. Construction quality is poor in rural Afghanistan, where buildings are often made of mud bricks and wood. Videos show collapsed homes and rescuers climbing for survivors. Injured people from the remote areas were seen being lifted onto gurneys, onto helicopters. Says Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid said the death toll has risen to 800 people. Earlier, the Interior Ministry spokesperson Mufti Abdul Mateen Khani has said that 622 people have been confirmed dead and more than 1,300 injured in the eastern provinces of Nangarhar, which includes Jalalabad and Kunar. So people are talking about how they were half buried. My God. He said one victim said, "My wife and 2 sons are dead and my father's injured in the hospital with me. We were trapped for 3 to 4 hours until people from other areas arrived to pull me out. Since the initial quake, at least 5 aftershocks ranging from 4.5 to 5.2 magnitude had hit the area throughout Monday, according to U.S. Geological Service." And the thing is, a lot of people, when it comes to earthquakes, it's like sometimes what happens is the initial earthquake will shake things loose, and then the aftershocks will finish off the job and destroy everything. And sometimes the aftershocks can actually be worse than the initial earthquake too. And so this is, 5 aftershocks. I heard of maybe like 1 or 2, but 5, it's a lot. So, one bad part about imperialism and the way the West treats the global South is that it displaces these countries so much that when natural disasters like this do happen, well, they don't really have the resources to help save their people like they need to. And think about, what the United States has done, in a 20-year war in Afghanistan and how it has displaced and harmed so many people in that region, right? We've killed hundreds of thousands of people in that region. You know, it's estimated somewhere, north of 1 million people in Iraq that our country has murdered for the sake of trying to find weapons of mass destruction. And so, the blowback isn't just on the initial wars, it's also the after effects that happen, right? Those after effects could be when a national disaster strikes. I put it an example like um, some of the resources that's being used um, in Florida, again, which would be paying for people with FEMA. That money could be going towards using it for things like ICE, building facilities, instead of actually tackling the underlying problem. And so all that money that could be used for the people who survived a hurricane here in Florida, well, that money went towards trying to put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound that is our immigration system. And so then that funds are not available. Well, the United States is also did this to areas like Afghanistan, right? Where our country has ravaged the country so that when events like this do happen, and they do happen quite often, then they don't have the infrastructure to be able to withstand these or to rebuild properly or to save lives. And so then it's really like an ongoing tragedy because of the initial conflict that the United States and other Western nations have started. And so, my thoughts are with the people of Afghanistan going through this, because I don't know what it's like, to have the earth shake underneath your feet. And that's got to be a scary feeling. And now many of them, hundreds of them, have to wake up and realize that their loved ones aren't there. So just continue to keep the people in Afghanistan in your thoughts. All right. So go ahead and go like to the stream. I'm still waiting on Donald Trump to show up. And here's the crazy part. If Donald Trump makes this announcement and he doesn't show up, that's going to look very bad on him. Like, what do you guys think would happen if he doesn't? Like, what do you think the optics are if he doesn't show up? Right? Let's get into some of the chat a little bit. Let me see. Thomas says, while we wait for Trumpy Trump, what's happening in Congress? I think they're on recess right now. Fire Repo says 800 is the low estimate. It'll be well over 1,000. And I'm EQ Geek been watching closely. EQ Geek. Maybe. Okay. Thank you very much. SoCal says the U.S. destroyed so much of Afghanistan, and with the manipulation in their economy, they don't have the means to make EQ safe. Infrastructure is terrible. Wow. Earthquake. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys are giving me the abbreviation of earthquake. I'm sorry. Oh, that's what you meant. You're an earthquake geek and you've been watching closely. Oh, okay. Wow. Man. It's a lot. Yeah, definitely. Let me check. Um, Let me check here, because for some reason it's like, yeah, all these like ABC News is just like they're still waiting. Wow. All these places are still waiting. You see. And a lot of people um are questioning. The reason why a lot of people are curious about this is because there's been a lot of talk in the news, especially about Donald Trump's health, right? A lot of us have been seeing the bruise on his hands, how he's been looking visibly different lately. And you got to realize, like, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, man's about to be 80, right? He's about to be 80 years old. And because the job of president is such a high stressful job, it ages you when you're in that job. And so now he's in his second term. And on top of that, I mean, he's being obedient to the corporate masters. And so, of course, it kind of reminds me of that ultimate evil in The Fifth Element where um, Zorg, he's talking to, I guess, his master, and he starts to like sweat blood because he's so nervous. It kind of makes me think about that when it comes to, the corporate parasites that really own our country right now. It's like he's obeying them, and it's like, and anybody who gets in the position of president is really just like a Darth Vader, who is serving the evil emperor. Like Darth Vader's like not the ultimate evil in, the empire. It's like the emperor is. So it's like, and you have somebody like a Donald Trump, a Joe Biden, a Barack Obama, a George W. Bush. They just take the place of the Darth Vader at that point in time. And he's not even that high up. He's probably like a Grand Moff Tarkin. Maybe not even a Grand Moff. Maybe this is my nerdy side coming out. But he's not even that high up, in the grand scheme of things. But the stress, that comes upon him from having that job is immense. And so it definitely ages you. And so a lot of people are visibly looking at Donald Trump and going, you look like you're deteriorating. Like it looks like in about 6 months, you're starting to look like a Crypt Keeper. You know what I mean? So that's the only thing I'm looking at right now. There's been a lot of different pictures surfacing about how Donald Trump's been looking. And I don't know if Trump is actually, if his health is actually truly deteriorating more visibly, then what does this mean? Well, if Donald Trump willingly steps down, then it will be JD Vance that becomes the president. And the thing is, like, as far as our political structure, the way it's set up, the fifth in line would be Speaker Johnson. Sorry, the next in line would be Speaker Johnson. So he would become the vice president because that's how our system is set up. And so then you would basically have a Vance Johnson presidency, which, dear God, help us, But that's ultimately what we would have if Donald Trump were to step down. And if they see that Donald Trump can't continue, like, they could invoke the 25th Amendment. And it's kind of funny because we're talking about this with Donald Trump when we were just talking about this with Joe Biden last year. And so now we see, look at Donald Trump's hand, right? And they try to put makeup on it to hide it, and they're just like, what's going on? somebody was, showing off his ankles, and I remember I was watching Savvy when she was talking about that, and um, his ankles look really really swollen. Well, that looks like edema, and edema is basically just swelling of the legs, right? Swelling of the legs, meaning that he's retaining water. And if he's retaining water, it could be a kidney issue. So, as somebody that's been on dialysis for almost 20 years, trust me, I know if it's a kidney issue, well, guess what? That's going to make things a lot more difficult for him. So, I don't know, you know. My concern is like if he has to step down, then the next person in line is JD Vance. And JD Vance is young. JD Vance is what? Early 40s? Yeah, me and JD Vance are the same age. Me and JD Vance are the same age. And actually, I'm slightly older than him by about a month. I know I look good, right? But yeah, so he's it's not looking good for him. And so this is one of the things that I think that is indicative of why I think that he's going to be trying to address his health. Yeah, it's not looking good for him. Some people are really going to have a field day if they observe him just not looking good. Let me share this with y'all because he's looking more frail. There you go. There he is. It says the first photo of Donald Trump has emerged after days out of public eye amidst swirling rumors about his health and even speculation of his death. And they're saying that he's been talking about heaven a lot lately. And I'm just like, what? Like, you, what? Like, what the hell is going on? And look at that. Like, it's him, but he doesn't look as spry as he used to. My question is, what do you guys think? Like, do you guys honestly think that Trump will? Do you think that if pressed, Trump will step down? I personally don't think he would. I think he has too much ego. I don't think he would at all. But at the same time, he could be pressured. Jay says second president in a row who is not right in the head. I mean, I argue none of them have ever been right in the head because they've never been on the right side of history. But second in a row, yeah. I mean, I can go back to Ronald Reagan, like towards the end of his, second term. Ronald Reagan, he had dementia. It was rumored that Nancy Reagan was actually the one that was running the country, not him. Ooh, Robert says the retention of fluid and what looks like to me jaundice makes it look like organ failure. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Ronald Reagan. Yeah. It's Fire Repo said, someone posted under the White House X trend. Stay tuned. He'll be alive again shortly. Oh my God. People are be clowning Trump. Oh my gosh. And they're still waiting on Trump. It has been 37 minutes and Trump still has not went live. I could have did a whole nother story. Okay. I could have started going live at three, my normal time. Wasting all my time like this. How are you going to tell us to be here at 2 p.m. and then you're not even here and it's 40 minutes late? All right. So Trump really is a Florida man. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. If I start this story and Trump comes up, I'm going to be pissed. All right. Let's go over this. Because there's a story that I did want to talk about. I wanted to get this story out of the way. So I don't have a thumbnail for this story because things have been going a little wonky this morning. Slight family emergency. So I'll have the thumbnail up for the clip, but I don't have it up just yet. But let's get into this. So one of the stories that I wanted to talk about is about New York and spying. NYPD spying on its citizens. So we're going to take a look at that and then we'll get into this because this is a story that I think is absolutely insane. I think more people need to know about this story because this can come to a city near you. So apparently here in not here, but in New York, citizens are being spied on by the NYPD. And this is really a cause for concern for a lot of people. And I think that we should be very wary about more mass surveillance happening. And I want to get into this story here. This says Adams, which is Mayor Eric Adams, quietly uses free internet at NYCHA to expand police surveillance. The Adams administration is using its flagship broadband program to give police real-time access to NYCHA camera feeds without telling anyone. So if you guys are from New York and you guys heard about this, let me know in the comments. But this is crazy. It says Eric Adams' administration is quietly using a flagship free internet program for public housing residents for another purpose, expanding NYPD surveillance. The New York City Police Department is working to use network connections established under a 3-year-old Big Apple Connect program linked to cameras at New York City Housing Authority, which is NYCHA. Developments directly to NYPD's Central Digital Surveillance System. A police department spokesperson confirmed New York's focus cameras at one development were linked last Wednesday to the spokesperson said. It says 19 more are set to follow, enabled by new modems and routers installed at NYCHA common spaces. The network connections allow the NYPD to feed closed circuit television footage directly into its citywide surveillance software systems, stream it remotely in real time, and review footage beginning at 30 days prior to an incident, all while having to ask New York City Housing Authority for permission. Previously, the police department can only access footage from cameras operated by NYCHA by physically visiting the Housing Authority's CCTV control rooms upon request for the purpose of investigating incidents. By the end of this year, the NYPD plans to connect video cameras at 20 NYCHA developments. It won't say which to the domain awareness system, the department's controversial counterterrorism and anti-crime platform that, without warrants, collects CCTV footage from thousands of cameras across the city. The system fuses expansive data on New Yorkers' physical movements, digital footprints, biographical information, and law enforcement interactions into a centralized repository, which the NYPD can harness to support facial recognition analysis. And here we go, predictive policing algorithms that use pattern recognition to decide where and how to allocate police resources. Do you see what's happening before you right now? Predictive policing. What did one person say? I'm blanking on his name, but after the shooting at the Catholic school last week, what happened? He said that they're going to start doing predictive policing models. And so now they're going to try to punish you for a crime you didn't even commit yet, or if you will commit it. And so this is dangerous. And really, it sounds like they're starting it here in New York. So I don't know what to tell y'all. This is looking bad. So let's continue on. Let's go here. Since the system formally launched in 2012, it received intense criticism from privacy and civil rights advocates for reinforcing racial bias in policing, shuttling information into federal immigration enforcement, and according to Amnesty International, having a chilling effect on citizens' ability to exercise their most basic rights to assemble and protest. The NYPD spokesperson, who spoke to New York Focus in the condition that his name not be used, said that just like any tool we use the domain awareness system responsibly to solve crimes. But the thing is, like, here's the question though. Just because it's considered illegal doesn't mean it's unethical, and just because it's considered legal doesn't make it ethical. But that being said, if we are protesting, let's say you got people who are protesting against the genocide that's happening against Palestinians. Well, then they can say, well, that's anti-Semitic. And they can make a law saying, oh, well, you protesting against Israel is anti-Semitic, so we have to take you in for anti-Semitism. And so if they see you walking out your apartment with a keffiyeh on, right, or a Palestinian flag or flag pin or something like that, then you know what they'll do? They can observe that through the CCTV and arrest you for just expressing your First Amendment right. Or they can make assumptions based on what you're doing. And so that's the scary part, is that they're now observing. And the crazy part is, here's the thing. You're doing this under the New York City Housing Authority, meaning these are people who are lower income living in these housing projects. You don't have this happening in the big high-rise buildings. You don't have this happening in these, more expensive apartments in New York. Why aren't they doing this there? Because aren't those the people you want to keep safe? No. See, here's the thing. They want to keep tabs on the poors. That's what it is. They want to keep tabs on the poors. They want to keep tabs on the working people. Because they don't want you to organize or do things that may actually help you circumvent the system. This isn't crime prevention. It's control. That's what it is. And the crazy part is they'll go, well, a lot of crime happens in these buildings and in the area. But anybody who has a smartphone with an internet connection will tell you that they can research and show that poverty and crime are very closely linked. And so if you were to alleviate the poverty in an area, the crime would go down at a commensurate rate. But they don't, because they're too damn greedy and they don't want to do that. So they rather take you in, place you in holding cells, or place you in jail. Uh-oh. All right. Donald Trump is live. Let's go to him right now. Let me make sure.
For this important announcement, 7 years in the making. As you know, this has been going on for a long period of time, and I am thrilled to report that the U.S. Space Command headquarters will move to the beautiful locale of a place called Huntsville, Alabama, forever to be known from this point forward as Rocket City. Okay, so Huntsville, Alabama, we love Alabama. I only won it by about 47 points. I don't think that influenced my decision, though, right? That didn't, right? But we had a lot of competition for this, and Alabama is getting it, Huntsville in particular. So congratulations, everybody. Katie, congratulations. This will result in more than 30,000 Alabama jobs, and probably much more than that, and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. And that's billions, because it can't be millions. It's billions and billions of dollars. Most importantly, this decision will help America defend and dominate the high frontier, as they call it. I want to thank Secretary Pete Hegseth. He's doing a fantastic job. And Secretary of the Air Force, Troy Mink. Troy, thank you very much. Great job you're doing, Troy. This is such a big deal. This is one that everybody wanted to know. What are you doing? I also want to thank Senators Katie Britt, and I want to give my condolences. Your grandmother, her grandmother just passed away. She was 100, right?
100, and she loves you, Mr. President.
Well, and she was very proud of you.
Thank you very much.
Very, very proud of you. So thank you, Katie.
Wonderful woman.
She must have been. To produce you indirectly, I can tell you she had to be. Tommy Tuberville, who's a great coach. And I won't say anything about what happened with Alabama football this weekend.
Let's leave that out.
But you're not used to that, right? You're not used to that. But Tommy, Auburn won, that's right. They did. So you're happy. Tommy's been a great senator, as you know, and a fantastic guy all around. He was also a tremendous coach. House Armed Services Committee Chair Mike Rogers. Thank you, Mike. Where's Mike? Mike, thank you very much. Doing great, Mike. Representatives Barry Moore, all great friends, Robert Adderholt, Gary Palmer, and Dale Strong. Thank you all very much, fellas. Appreciate it. In my first term, I created a thing called Space Force. So important. You know, we were losing the race in space very badly to China and to Russia. And now we're far and away number one in space, and reestablish Space Com with a mission to protect American space assets and detect any threat to our homeland. We initially selected Huntsville for the Spacecom headquarters, yet those plans were wrongfully obstructed by the Biden administration. And as you know, they moved them to a different locale. And today we're moving forward with what we want to do and the place that we want to have this. And this will be there for hopefully hundreds of years. That's where it's going to be. I will say I want to thank Colorado. The problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do mail-in voting. They went to all mail-in voting. So they have automatically crooked elections. And we can't have that. When a state is for mail-in voting, that means they want dishonest elections, because that's what that means. So that played a big factor also. In Huntsville, Spacecom Com will play a key role in building the Golden Dome, as you know. That's going to be a big thing. Everybody wants to be a participant in it. Missile Defense Shield, we're going to be having a Golden Dome that the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. The finest, the best. And by the way, Canada called. They want to be a part of it, and that'll be great. But Canada wants very much to be included in that, and we're going to work something out with them, I hope. It will also ensure that our technological capabilities, of which we're way ahead of anybody else, there's nobody close, remain unmatched long into the future. So I'd like to ask Secretary Hegseth to say a few words. He was very much a part of it. And really, everybody behind me was. Every one of these people would call me and lobby me. I said, Katie, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I know what you want. She said, that's right, sir. That's what I want. And they got their way. So I just want to congratulate. These are really special people. They're politicians in many ways, but they're great patriots, I think even more so than politicians. So they fought very hard to get it, and it's an honor to give it to Huntsville. Pete, say a few words, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. As usual, right place, right time, for the right reason. In your first administration, you established the Space Force at a time when we knew we had to be looking to that domain of space. You also reestablished SpaceCom to ensure that priority was put in place. And you, through the Air Force, independently identified that Huntsville, Alabama was the right place to put it. For other reasons, in the next administration under Biden, they decided to move it somewhere else. Well, during that time, the DoD Inspector General, the Government Affairs Office, they did their own assessments. And where did they say SpaceCom could go? Huntsville, Alabama. So what you're doing today, Mr. President, is restoring it to precisely where it should be based on what the Space Force, the Air Force, your leadership believes will give us strategic advantage in the future. That is Huntsville, Alabama. We are way ahead in space, but this will ensure we stay leaps and bounds ahead because that's the most important domain. Whoever controls the skies will control the future of warfare. And Mr. President, today you're ensuring that happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Katie, would you like to say something?
Mr. President, we are grateful for your leadership on this and restoring Space Command to its rightful home in Huntsville, Alabama. This delegation has worked together, both chambers, both parties, to make sure that Huntsville was the place that Space Command called home. As was mentioned, obviously the Biden administration chose to make this political. What we want to do is put the safety and security of Americans first. We want to make sure that our war fighter is put first, and we want to make sure that America continues to lead. And today, Mr. President, you've allowed that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tommy, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. This is a great day for our country, not just for our state of Alabama. We need help in our military. We need to catch up. And as Secretary has said, we're not behind in space, but we know where we're at, and we need to expound on that. Now, this move will save the taxpayers $480 million. It's not going to cost more. It's going to cut $480 million. We have the plans intact. It'll be behind a secure wall in Huntsville, Alabama, at Redstone Arsenal. We have 40,000 people there. We have the FBI there. We have missile defense there. We have NASA, Blue Origin, and SpaceX. It is the perfect place for Space Command. I would tell you today, and I've spoke with the president for the last 3 or 4 years about this. If I thought it needed to go somewhere else because I understand the security of our country, I'd be for that. But the best place for Space Command is Huntsville, Alabama, because what we have and what it means to this country is going to be so important. So thank you, Mr. President, for this, and we look forward to building a huge Space Command and having the Donald J. Trump Space Command Center in Huntsville, Alabama.
Absolutely.
Here, here.
JD, would you like to say something?
Sure. Well, Mr. President, thank you. I'll be very brief here. I lobbied the president hard to put it in Ohio, but he said these people behind us, these Alabamas, are just too powerful and too persuasive. And so it's in Alabama. But as Tommy said, this is exactly the right place for Space Force and Space Command. I think Americans ought to appreciate the fact that you can't win the battle of the future unless you control the skies. the cyber security, the communications, the entire infrastructure of the battle in the 21st century will be in space. So it was a visionary move in the first administration for the president to set up Space Force, and I think an equally visionary move to make sure that Space Force is right where it should be in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, anybody want to say anything? Would you like to say?
Mr. President, another promise made, another promise kept. You think about it, Redstone Arsenal is critical to national security. The president said when you were the 45th president, let's do what's right for national security. And today, that's exactly what we're doing. It's not because of this or that. It's because it's right for national security. You think of the 21 categories that were evaluated to determine what was best for national security. All indicators pointed back to Huntsville, Alabama, and Redstone Arsenal. We have the right people at the right place at the right time. Mr. President, on behalf of the people of the 5th Congressional District and all of Alabama, thank you for keeping your word. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Anybody?
Let me just say, Mr. President, I want to say thank you. And thank you for doing this because it was the right thing to do. When they looked at all the numbers, Huntsville was the place to go. And like you say, it was unfortunately pulled out, but you made it right. So I want to just say thank you again for a grateful nation, and to the state of Alabama, we're very grateful. Thank you and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Throughout history, militaries has always understood that whoever could hold the high ground held the advantage. Space is the ultimate high ground.
Okay, so hang on. While these nobody's talk, let me get something correct here. The big announcement is we're moving the Space Force to Huntsville, Alabama. What big infrastructure project that's going to be beneficial for the people of Alabama? How is this going to help them economically? Right? Because I'm curious. I'm curious about how this would help economically the people in Huntsville, right? I had no idea what the president is going to be talking about, and now that we basically know, and I kept watching because I was waiting to see. Okay, so are you going to be talking about anything else? And it doesn't look like he's going to be talking about anything else. So now I'm thinking, well, if Donald Trump is this the only thing, it kind of feels like Donald Trump was trolling. Does it feel like Donald Trump was trolling? Let me see something. Because that's why I let me see what the median income is for Huntsville. And yeah. Huntsville, Alabama is actually one of the most expensive places in Alabama. Hang on.
Talked about the cost savings associated with this announcement. Can you talk about the strategic benefits by having Space Force Command headquartered in Huntsville?
Well, it just works because we have so much else there. and having a central, you could call it a central command, but it really is a command station. Also, even locationally, where it is, and when you think about flying distances, if you can save a half an hour as fast as some of these planes go and things go, and even the rockets go, if you can save by having the best location. So we went out, as you know, to experts, and we had 4 different groups of experts. They all said this was the best location. I also loved it from the standpoint, I know the people of Alabama, they are great people, work hard, and there's no games, and they're very proud of it. And I would say they fought harder for it than anybody else also. A lot of states, 5 states really wanted it, but they wanted it more. And I kid you not when I say that these people, they spoke to me a lot. That's all they wanted to talk about. They didn't want to talk about the weather. They only wanted to talk about moving to this location, moving to Alabama, Huntsville in particular. So we're honored to do it. They really wanted it badly, and they got it. Peter?
President Trump, something completely different, but about a big viral social media trend over the weekend. How did you find out over the weekend that you were dead? You see that?
No.
People didn't see it for a couple of days. 1.3 million user engagements as of Saturday morning about your demise.
Really? I didn't see that. You know, I have heard, it's sort of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said, there must be something wrong with him. Biden wouldn't do them for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him, and we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. No, I heard that. I get reports. Now, you knew I did an interview that lasted for about an hour and a half with somebody, and everybody saw that was on one of your competitors. I did numerous shows, and also did a number of truths, long truths, and I think pretty poignant truths. No, I was very active over the weekend. They also knew I went out to visit some people at the club that I own pretty nearby on the Potomac River. And no, I've been very active actually over the weekend. I didn't hear that one. That's pretty serious stuff. Well, it's fake news. You know, it's just it's so fake. That's why the media has so little credibility. I knew they were saying, like, is he okay? How's he feeling? What's wrong? I said, I just left. And it's also sort of a longer weekend, you know, it's Labor Day weekend. So I would say a lot of people know I was very active this Labor Day. I had heard that, but I didn't hear it to that extent. Go ahead, Peter.
Something else. We know that this country has a huge problem with school shootings. You've said that you're open to sending the National Guard pretty much anywhere. Would you ever consider sending an armed National Guardsman to every school?
Well, we have a big problem with school shooting, but we also have thousands and thousands of schools that run perfectly. You know, they talk about you can do things construction-wise, and that's really I think nobody knows more about construction than me. You can build the construction doors. You can build what they call safety doors, where they lock on the outside, the inside, and every place else. Well, but if one of these lunatics happens to get through, then the police can't get in. Then they're looking for keys all over the place, and it takes a lot of disadvantages to doing, spending billions and billions of dollars and actually making it safer in some way for some of these lunatics that we're dealing with. But I don't think so. I've thrown out the concept. We have great teachers that love our children. The parents love the children. Teachers love the children too. And if you took a small percentage of those teachers that were in the military, that were distinguished in the military, that were in the National Guard, et cetera, and you let them carry, that's something that a lot of people like. I sort of liked it. I'd have to be studied, but they're trained. They know about weapons. You can't do it with every teacher because most teachers don't know, and but I always thought that would be an alternative. But it just we've had a lot of instances. Other countries have also. They have different kinds of problems than we have, but we do have. There's something going on, and it's a bad thing. Yes, please.
Have you spoken with President Putin in the past week? Have you spoken with President Putin?
Yeah, I don't want to. I have learned things that will be very interesting. I think in the next few days you'll find out.
Will there be any consequences if there isn't some type of announcement of a meeting with President Putin and President
Yeah.
Zelensky?
Yeah, they
And
will.
what could those consequences
We're going to
be?
see what happens. We're going to see what they do and what happens. I'm watching it very closely. Last week, they lost 7,000 between the two countries, 7,313 soldiers, to be somewhat exact, for no reason whatsoever. And they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, but they're soldiers. I want to see it end. Yeah.
Mr. President, have you decided you're definitely going to send National Guard troops to Chicago?
I didn't say when, but the answer is, look, Chicago's very interesting because I watched Pritzker get up and say we don't need help, we're safe. But 2 weeks ago, they had 6 people murdered, and they had 24 people hit by bullets. Last week, as you know, it was 7 people, 24 people hit, and 7 people died. And then over the last 2 days, that was the crown jewel. They had, I guess, 9 or 10 killed, and 50 hit with bullets. And you have this governor get up, who's a terrible governor. Probably he and Gavin Newsom would be probably the 2 worst and most naive. They're naive. Either they're naive or they're very untruthful. And he'll say, we don't want any protection. We don't need. So in the last 3 weeks, he's lost almost 20 people killed. There's no place in the world, including you can go to Afghanistan, you can go to places that you would think of. They don't even come close to this. Chicago is a hellhole right now. Baltimore is a hellhole right now. Parts of Los Angeles are terrible. If we didn't put out the fires, and I mean the other fires, the bullet fires, they didn't do a good job with it. They should have had the water coming down, like I said. We had to release the water. We had to go in and release the water to LA. It's so badly run. But if I didn't send the National Guard into Los Angeles, I would be making an announcement today. I'd be talking about Huntsville, and I'd simultaneously be saying, by the way, the Olympics is not coming to Los Angeles. If we didn't do that, and even the sheriff, the top law enforcement person in Los Angeles said, we could not have handled it without them. So that's what he said.
Make your mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks, and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe. Everyone likes you anyway. They probably wouldn't do it. But it's so dangerous. And there are people in this audience that you've suffered greatly. There are people in this audience that have been mugged and hurt badly, and they don't want to talk about it. Maybe you were very brave in talking about it. You made quite an impression on a lot of people. I appreciate it. But there were other people in this room that have been hurt very badly just walking down the street in D.C. Washington, D.C. is a safe zone right now. It's a safe city. The restaurants are open. They're booming. You can't get a restaurant. New restaurants are announcing that they're going to be open. This took place in 12 days. Now it's 15 days, but 3 days ago, it became what's known as a safe zone. It's a safe city. And this city was really bad, really, really bad. We took 1,600 people out, hardcore criminals that will not be coming back anytime soon. And we're very proud of it. To have our nation's capital lose every week, it was like years, many years, where every single week, somebody was killed for many, many, many consecutive weeks. This went on for years. And then we had last week, it was announced that nobody was killed last week. And I made that announcement in front of a very distinguished leader of a country. And I'm saying proudly, ladies and gentlemen, nobody was killed in Washington, D.C. this week. He looked at me like, what's that all about? I say, yeah, we have a little bit of a crime problem. And we don't have a crime problem in Washington anymore. And the mayor has been very helpful. And the police commission has been very helpful. And it's been a great team. And I would love to have Governor Pritzker call me, I'd gain respect for him and say, we do have a problem and we'd love you to send in the troops because you know what? The people, they have to be protected. I saw today on one of your networks, not a friendly network, except really the opposite, I would say, very unfriendly network. And they interviewed about 12 people on this morning. Most of them were African American, they were black. And they were saying, please, please, please let the president send in. These were people from Chicago. Please, we need help. We need help. We can't walk outside. We're petrified. If the governor of Illinois would call me up, I would love to do it. Now, we're going to do it anyway. We have the right to do it because I have an obligation to protect this country. And that includes Baltimore. I saw where Governor Moore was asking me to take a walk down the street of Baltimore. Well, Baltimore is a very unsafe place. It's rated number 4 in the city, one of the most unsafe places anywhere in the world. But, you know, we took care. This was a beautiful thing that happened in Washington because we showed that it could be done. And this wasn't just sending big, strong guys, and they are big and they are strong. You know, we had a great decision from the Supreme Court that had to do with sort of talent. It had to do with you are put down based on merit. You can hire based on merit. So merit for a soldier or for a policeman is strong, physically fit, having a certain ability, not a person that is woke and got the job through woke, but wasn't strong enough to lift a gun out of the holster, et cetera, et cetera. No, I looked at the police. As you know, last week I went over, we had a meeting there had to be 300 people, and they were all very impressive looking. And when the bad guys see them, they're not going to do a thing. And so I'm very proud of Washington. It serves as a template, and we're going to do it elsewhere. But Chicago is certainly going to be high. I would love to have him call. I would love the governor of Illinois. I'd be honored to take his call. All he has to do is say, sir, we need help. It's out of control. And everyone knows it is. He's not kidding anyone. I would love to have, I would say, Governor Moore call, because I watched him over the weekend trying to explain that Baltimore, what they need is housing. No, they don't need housing. They need to get rid of the criminals. These are hardcore criminals. You know, we took many people off the streets of Washington, D.C. They're hardcore. They're not going to be good. In 10 years, in 20 years, in 2 years, they're going to be criminals. They were born to be criminals, frankly. They were born to be criminals, and they're tough and mean, and they'll cut your throat, and they won't even think about it the next day. They won't even remember that they did it. And we're not going to have those people. Washington, D.C. is now a safe zone. It's a safe place. And you can walk, Katie, you can walk right down the street with, by the way, one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen, which is her husband. He was a football player for like 11 years in the NFL. He's a big person. But big doesn't mean anything when they have guns and when they have knives and everything else that they have, right? But you can walk right down the street, even by yourself, and you're totally safe. Washington, D.C. is a great thing. Yes, ma'am, please.
Calling on Democratic leaders across the country to work with you on crime. Do you see your efforts here in D.C., including, for example, working with Mayor Bowser here as a model for bringing more bipartisanship in matters not only with crime, but also issues that matter to everyday American people's lives?
So Mayor Bowser's been great. She could have taken the thing well, and then after I clean it up, they'll take credit for it. You know what they do is they take credit. Like, we cleaned up Los Angeles. We did a great job there. And it was overwhelming what was going on. And again, the police chief made a statement that we could not have done, there's no way they could handle it. You saw what was happening out there. It was going to be a disaster. We stopped it cold. If we didn't do that, would have been a very sad day. And you know, remember, we have the Olympics, we have the World Cup, we have all these things coming, and we have 250, all of these things coming. But I watched Newsom get up and say he's doing a great. He's not. We're the ones that did it, and that's okay, whatever it takes. But the main thing is But he got up and said we did it. Well, he didn't want us there, and he's going to need us again because it's starting to form again. I see it. It's starting to form again. You know, we have to maintain. It's like maintenance on an airplane. You can buy it, but you have to maintain it. And if you don't maintain it, a good plane becomes very unsafe very quickly. So. it's an honor to do it. It's a lot of presidents wouldn't do what I'm doing. I don't need this heat, but when I watched television last night and I'm watching the news and I see that 9 people were killed in Chicago and 54 were badly wounded with bullets, I say, that's not this country. We have to do something. And I do say this, I say this very much. I'm not speaking to anybody but them right now. I would love to receive calls from governors and mayors saying they need help. We'll help them. We have a lot of people. We have a great force. We have a great military force. You know, Pete will tell you that when I was running for office, and this was a big headline, I think, you know, probably got me a couple of votes, but you couldn't sign people in the military. Nobody wanted to join the military, the Army, Air Force, the Navy, Marines, Space Force, Coast Guard. We never forget Coast Guard because they've done such a great job. Never. But nobody wanted to join any of them. We were way below what we wanted. Every single one. The closest was the Marines, whatever that is. You'll explain that to me. But the closest was the Marines. But every service was way down, way down. And then I got elected, and our country is the hottest country anywhere in the world right now. Everybody's talking about the USA. They're talking about the job that we're doing. Everybody. We have the best economy. We have a very, very important decision being made by the Supreme Court because our country is the richest, the strongest, the most powerful. But if for some reason, some liberal court, I'm talking about the court that just ruled, where even an Obama judge voted in favor of us, which I gave him a compliment yesterday, as you know. I said that took great courage. But it's a liberal court, and it's going up to the Supreme Court, who I think have been incredible people. I think they've made very wise decisions. But the tariff question, because without the tariffs, this country is in serious, serious trouble. We've taken in almost $17 trillion of investment is coming in. Most of it is coming because of tariffs. And if for some reason somebody wanted to be politically correct, I actually think it's unpolitically correct. I think politically correct is to approve it, because there's nothing so popular as what's happened to our country. Our country is doing so well. But we had a liberal court gave us a very shocking ruling. And that ruling is basically saying that the trillions of dollars that are pouring into our country, putting us in a position like no country is anywhere in the world, that they'd like to see us that taken away. By the way, a lot of the people behind that lawsuit, that particular, are from foreign countries, I might add.
There's a video that is circulating online now of the White House where a window is open to the residence upstairs and somebody is throwing a big bag out the window. Have you seen this?
No, that's probably AI generated.
So
Actually, you can't open the windows. You know why? They're all heavily armored and bulletproof.
So that's a fake video.
Well, it's got to be, because I know every window up there. The last place I'd be doing it is that, because there's cameras all over the place, right? Including yours. No, but every window, I've never seen a window that's, in fact, my wife was complaining about it the other day. She said, love to have a little fresh air come in, but you can't. They're bulletproof. And number one, they're sealed. And number two, each window weighs about 600 pounds. You have to be pretty strong to open them up. No.
Do y'all want to keep watching? I don't feel like it's worth watching anymore. Yeah. Let's talk about this whole thing about Huntsville, because I don't want you guys to be tortured any further. And yes, CBC voter, I get it. I get it. You don't, yeah. I'm not going to have you guys go through that anymore. But one thing I would like to do is let me share you guys with some information. So here is, according to the Google machine, here's the median income of Huntsville, Alabama, right? The median income of Huntsville, Alabama is $38,349 a year. So let's say $38,349 a year divided by 52 weeks a year is $737.48 divided by 40 would be $18.43 an hour. Okay. That's the median income. Now, let's get into this. Let me share this with you guys. Shout out to Roger Meadows for this. So here's the out of reach from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. In Alabama, the minimum wage in Alabama is $7.25 an hour, which means you need to make $20.61 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, right? So even the median income is below what you need in order to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. But not just that. The most expensive areas in in Alabama, one of the top behind Birmingham is Huntsville. So in Huntsville, you need to make $24 an hour in order to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And so if you take a look at that, and they'll say, well, we're going to build the Space Force in Huntsville, Alabama, which is going to be an economic boom to the area because we're going to have construction crews building that place, which will be true, right? It would be somewhat of an economic uplift. And I think Alabama is actually one of the poorest states in the union. Unfortunately, how is that really going to inject more tangible material benefits to the people of Alabama outside of moving the Space Force to Huntsville? How is that really going to help them in a fundamental way once it's built and that you have the Space Force? People can say, well, some businesses will move there. But at the same time, who's really going to benefit the most? Is it going to be the people in the area, or is it going to be the military contractors? Also, here's the crazy part. Why do we have a Space Force when we don't even have universal health care? Like, hang on, let me ask you something. Now, I get the whole concept of defense, right? As an American, I get defending from enemies, right? First of all, you need to stop creating enemies with the imperialism that y'all be doing. That's first and foremost. Stop creating enemies, because now it's a feedback loop. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that the United States is doing. First of all. Second of all, we're so focused on building our arsenal that we're neglecting our refrigerator. Yeah, our closet's full of guns, but our fridge is empty. So what? You expect us to eat the bullets? You expect to eat pieces of, gun magazines? What? And that money's going to go to these big corporations. It's not going to come back to us. Not at all. Has it ever? No. Now we see that how is it really going to materially benefit the people on the ground, especially the poorest among them? And he's looking at Huntsville, Alabama. He's not looking at Birmingham. And so I don't see a really long-term tangible benefit that would actually help Alabama. And on top of that, it's just more military and fighting and making killing machines, military fighting killing machines, and over and over and over. And here's the thing. Now you have to have an excuse to use it. Because if you don't have an excuse to use it, then it's just draining money out of our economy. So now you have to come up with what? More defense, more offense, right? So now you have to create more enemies to make an excuse to say, oh, we need the Space Force. And why did the United States initially go to space? The United States initially went to space not because of some sense of wonder, not because we really just wanted to see what was out there and expand our minds and understanding of our universe. No, baby. It wasn't because of that. It was because they didn't want the American people to look at the Soviet Union and go, oh my God, they're doing stuff that is aspirational. They're actually, putting satellites into space and actually improving their people. You want to know why we actually had a boom in the 50s and 60s economically? It wasn't necessarily because it wasn't completely necessarily because the United States suddenly had a change of heart and said, you know what, we need to build up the middle class. No. It was because they didn't want the American people to look at the Soviet Union and see socialism happening and go, oh my God, they're doing so much better than us. We should be like that. This is what they were afraid of. So you know what they did? They threw a bone to the middle class, mainly white people. They threw a bone and said, here you go. There you go. Now stop looking at that Soviet Union. You got something now. You happy? So guess what happened when the Soviet Union fell? When the biggest socialist bloc fell, once the Cold War was over, technically over, the United States said, give me that bone back. It's my bone. They debowed the bone back. That was bars. They debowed the bone back. But that's exactly what they did. It wasn't because it was out of some goodness of their hearts. It was because they saw that we could look across the Atlantic into Eastern Europe and go, hey, somebody's doing it way better than this system. We should change it just like them. And this is why the whole issue with TikTok is happening. This is why the United States is, especially Trump, is mad because of BRICS, because Trump's wanting to put heavy tariffs on BRICS member nations. This is exactly why Donald Trump is trying to reel in as much as he can. The West is trying to reel back in as much as they can. The Sahel states, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, because they don't want them to have the independence. So then their people start to be built up again. And then next thing you know, we look at them and we go, wait a minute. They're doing good. Why aren't we? They're building themselves up. Why aren't we? Now, granted, no country is perfect, right? China has its issues. One of the biggest issues I have with China is that China still trades with Israel. But at the same time, China still trades with the United States too. But that's one of my biggest issues with them. And my thing is, like, China should stop trading with Israel. But that also means that China should stop trading with the West, period, which China has to weigh that. One of my biggest issues with India is Modi is a fascist. So fuck Modi. He needs to go. My issues with Brazil is that Brazil doesn't seem like it's going far enough. Lula da Silva is a little bit better than Bernie Sanders, but he can do better. In South Africa, Y'all need Julius Malema. Yeah, Ramaphosa, he's milk toast. Y'all need Uncle Julius. That's what y'all need, right? Of the EFF. I don't care about if he's saying that song. Get over it. He's actually trying to do for his people. But that's the thing, right? In Russia, I ain't no fan of Putin because Putin, he don't have much solidarity with me. But at the same time, I do get that he wants to resist the West. I get that. At the same time, there's a lot that I disagree with Putin on. Like, Putin is nowhere near. You know what I mean? So, but the thing is that Trump is so scared of the United States looking weak. But the problem is that the United States is weak. That's the problem. Or at least it's weaker than what it's been. It has become weaker. Because the United States' greatest strength in attaining the power that it had was in its people. But it left its people in the dust. And so now, the people are the ground that the United States ran on. But it's like Wild E. Coyote that runs off a cliff. And his feet are still moving, but there's nothing underneath him. Eventually, he's going to stop, he's going to look down, and he's going to drop. And this is what's going on right now with the United States. The United States, in slow motion, has stopped already. And now they're looking down, but they haven't just dropped just yet. Meanwhile, a lot of these countries in the global south are supporting the people who are the ground underneath their feet. And now you have African countries like the Sahel states doing the same thing. Granted, I will say this. There are some rumors that, like, the parliamentary junta in Burkina Faso, they're saying right now that, they're doing things like banning homosexuality, things like that, which I do have a problem with. And I just don't want to see them repeat the same mistakes of Cuba, but they have to work that out. But at the same time, they're building up their people in a material fashion. And that's the problem in the United States. The United States not allowed. The corporate parasites have control of our government. And so they steered our government in such a way where they say, well, screw the people. We're going to do this. We're just going to use them as much as we can, and we're going to toss them away instead of actually benefiting them and keeping them around. So now the United States is up shit creek without a paddle. And so because the United States is really a failing empire, they had to create a whole new branch of military for the government. And now they have to come up with excuses to go after other countries. But what are you going to do when now that the United States has to compete with another superpower that is China? China is on board to becoming the next global superpower. And instead of making it a hegemony, they're making it a multipolar world instead, where the United States has to actually go against a bloc, not just one country. And now I think there was a poll done. Let me see if I can find this poll. There was a poll that was done recently. Okay. Okay, let me share this. And this is also what scares people like Donald Trump. This is why these performative things that he's doing aren't working. It says capitalism losing in favor among young Americans. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable view of capitalism? So Americans, all Americans, 59% said they have a favorable view of capitalism versus 41. When you break it down by age, ages 18 to 29 is 50-50. Ages 30 to 44, which is in my age group, guess what? 52% of people have an unfavorable view of capitalism. So it's starting to trend into the anti-capitalist category. But look at this. Young Americans overall favorable towards socialism. Favorable is red, unfavorable is gray. So all Americans, okay, take a look there, 57%, right, are unfavorable. But then when you break it down by age, 62% of young people ages 18 to 29, which is Gen Z, are favorable towards socialism, are favorable towards the workers owning the means of production. And then ages 30 to 44, my age group, is 48%. And I just want to bring attention to age 65 because the reason why I'm paying attention to age 65 is really interesting. A third of people who are over the age of 65 have a favorable view of socialism. These are the people that were raised during the Cold War. A third of them have a favorable view of socialism? A third. That's big. A third of boomers. These are the people that had to hide under their desks when they were kids because of Sputnik. And a third of them are like, you know what? Socialism doesn't look so bad. Take into account the report that I was talking about on Sunday on RBN, how we have a lot more people who are older, particularly boomers, that are actually becoming homeless now. Do you think they still favor capitalism? And so now you have the ruling class getting scared. So they're like, Don, hey, you got to perform. You gotta show them that we're still fighting in this. But you can't do anything materially for them. Or if you do something, it has to be very minute that gives us a larger ROI, return on investment. So what is it? Okay, we're actually not going to give people health care. We're not going to subsidize housing for the people who are the poorest among us. We're not going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. We're not going to put emphasis on pushing for more worker cooperatives so that people actually hold power within their workplace to be able to operate it democratically. We're not going to free up more schools so that people can either have the choice of going to college without having to pay a tuition or go to trade school without having to pay a tuition. No. We're going to build a headquarters for Space Force. And what is that really going to do for the large majority of people within the state of Alabama? Is it really going to do anything? That's the problem. That announcement was performative. It was purely performative. It was meant to make you look at Donald Trump and make you think he's doing something. They put on the VR glasses and they put you on a treadmill. And you're running. and it looks like you're going places. They put VR glasses on your head, they put you on a treadmill, and they put a fan in front of your face, and they said, oh, you're actually going somewhere. But then when the VR glasses come off, the fan gets shut down, and the treadmill stops, what happens? You notice what? You're still stuck in the same spot you've been in the entire time. There is no progression. And that's the point. And the same tactics that Donald Trump is using is the same tactics that the Democrats use as well. The only difference is Donald Trump is merely using it mainly for white people. The Democrats, they do it for marginalized people. Oh, we're moving somewhere. We're going somewhere. And then next thing you know, you ain't going nowhere. You ever been in a car and you're in traffic, but then you fall asleep? You're in a passenger, right? Don't fall asleep while driving. But you're in the passenger seat and you fall asleep and you're in traffic, but then you wake up and you're still in the same spot. Like, what? I thought we were moving. Nope. That's it. So this is the reason why it is important to look at what they say versus what they do. Both parties, because they both want you to think you're moving when in reality ain't nothing coming out. This is the equivalent of you feeling like you gotta take a big old dookie, and then by the time you look in the toilet, it says bitty tiny little piece of something. And then you get mad and frustrated. I felt all that for what? I know that was really graphic, but everybody's had that moment. Am I wrong? This is exactly what happened with Donald Trump just now. Everybody was like, oh my God, he's going to be doing an announcement. He's doing an announcement on Tuesday at 2. He's doing an announcement Tuesday at 2. This man was almost an hour late starting this thing up. All for what? All for what? To announce he's moving the Space Force to Huntsville, Alabama. You could have did that in a damn tweet. Donald Trump is one of the best at wasting everybody's time. I shouldn't have you know what? I shouldn't have even covered it. I should have covered it. Because the thing is like, you had us waiting for almost an hour. Also, you can just announce about the Space Force moving. This is the equivalent of Donald Trump leaving a podium open and then CNN covering the podium and then not going to anything else. That's basically it. And Donald Trump knew exactly what he was doing. He knew it. But I think the good part about this is I want people to realize that this isn't helping the workers in a really material way. And if it does help workers, it's going to be a very small few. They will be the exception, not the rule. And that's how it always is with both parties. There's always an exception. Oh my goodness. Well, my friend is a business owner and they did this much better. Or my friend they were dirt poor and now they earned their first million. Or my friend did this and they were able to get this high and blah, 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 blah. And guess what? They're always the exception to the rule. It's never the rule. It's never the general populace actually coming up. And that's the issue with this system. And this is why I think it's so important that we focus on the material benefits instead of just empty words or announcements. Go ahead and get the live stream, y'all. I cannot believe I had to stop my story in the middle of my story just for that BS. Got my blood pressure all up. Lord Jesus. Good thing I had a big lunch. Let's get into the rest of the story that I was covering earlier, shall we? So let's continue on. And as far as what's going on in New York, right? We can continue here. It says, since the system formally launched in 2012, it has received intense criticism from privacy and civil rights advocates for reinforcing racial bias in policing, shuttling information to federal immigration enforcement, according to Amnesty International, having a chilling effect on citizens' ability to exercise their most basic rights to assemble and protest. The NYPD spokesperson who spoke to New York Focus on the condition that his name might be used said that just like any tool we use the domain awareness system responsibly to solve crimes. New York Focus learned of the plans for expanded surveillance, which have not previously been reported. After reviewing contracts and pitch decks for Big Apple Connect that describe the Adams administration intention as early as summer of 2022 to use the free internet program to expand NYPD video surveillance capabilities in public housing. The City of Office Technology and Innovation released the contracts and pitch decks to the telecom provider People's Choice Communications in response to a public records request, which OTI delayed 16 times and only fulfilled after a lawsuit. That provider had piloted an earlier free internet program at NYCHA under Mayor Bill de Blasio, but the Adams administration controversially scrapped it and replaced it with a Big Apple Connect. So it's very shady that they actually are taking these steps in order to do mass surveillance really on the poorest among us, right? And says never in those press events, question and answers, testimony, in the mayor's annual management report or any other publicly available materials, New York Focus could identify did the Adams administration mention video surveillance component of Big Apple Connect. So this basically means that people like Eric Adams, who's still mayor of New York, at least that we know of until November, is busy trying to make sure that the NYPD spies on New Yorkers while not really doing much in as far as people who are economically disenfranchised. It says public housing residents didn't appear to be informed of the surveillance expansion either. I would think that it is very shameful. I'm not aware that it's happening here because, again, everything they keep is hush hush. I say shame on them. That's from Lehigh Brooks, president of the Tenant Association at Bronx Throgs Neck Houses. It says New York Focus corresponded extensively with OTI, the NYPD, and NYCHA about the video surveillance component of Big Apple Connect to understand how it was conceived and its current status. The agencies provided contradictory and evolving accounts. So, it's bad, essentially, when they keep things hush hush and they don't want you to know about it. Like, if I were trying to make sure that I wanted people to feel safe, well, I would tell them, like, look, we're going to do mass surveillance. But then, people are going to have a problem with being mass surveilled. And my thing is, like, mass surveillance is very dark, very dystopian, because you're constantly being watched and monitored. But the crazy part about it is there could have been other things set in place to help the community rather than paying for all this mass surveillance. Millions of dollars going into mass surveillance of New Yorkers, when in reality, if you really wanted to combat crime, like I was just talking in the previous segment about Donald Trump, if you really wanted to combat crime, you could attack the poverty issue. Those millions of dollars that's being spent, being given to these tech companies and to the NYPD, could actually go towards uplifting the people within these housing projects to make sure that they actually, have upward mobility. But instead of doing that for them, they are busy pushing for a spy to watch on you 24/7. And that money's going where? That money's going to really just watch you at all times. Instead of creating conditions where you don't need to be watched at all times. And by the way, I need to say this as well. This is infantilizing those of us who are economically displaced, because you're not seeing this being done to wealthier folks. Now, wealthy folks, what they do have? They have doormen at their buildings, but do they have people? Do they have the NYPD monitoring CCTV throughout their building and basically essentially a live stream? Do they have that? If not, then why do you have to do it in lower income? Oh, because poverty and crime have a close link. Well, let's do this. Let's cut to the chase and get to the underlying problem. But if you get to the underlying problem, then what does that mean? You're going to have to take away from who? The parasites. You're going to have to take away from the parasites that live in Manhattan. And you're going to have to give some of the surplus value that they stole and give it to the people in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in Queens, in Long Island. You're going to have to give it to them. But they don't want to do that because they stole it first. They don't want to give the money back to the people who they made millions and billions off of. This is why workers should own the company collectively. Because then when it comes to economics, they actually retain the profits themselves collectively. And then they actually do not have to worry as much about upward mobility because the money's not going to one or two or a small group at the top. Economics and crime are intrinsically linked, y'all. And we'll finish up here. The civil liberties watchdogs were alarmed to learn of New York Focus's findings. Jerome Greco, supervising attorney of Legal Aid Society Digital Forensics Unit, frame the surveillance expansion at NYCHA as part of a growing overreach of policing capabilities throughout the city. The NYPD is getting direct access to other cities' agencies' data and information, whether it be surveillance related or not, seemingly with little to no oversight or poor ability to prevent it. It's also part of an ongoing campaign by the NYPD to expand not only their surveillance capabilities in general, but specifically get access to more and more camera feeds around the city. In recent years, the NYPD's lack of transparency around surveillance technology has been highlighted in audits conducted by the city's Department of Investigation. The reports found that the NYPD has not fully complied with the New York City's Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology Act, which requires the NYPD to publicly disclose new surveillance operations before implementing them. Asked about the checks and balances in place for its video surveillance technology, the NYPD spokesperson pointed to New York Focus to a 2023 report laying out internal audit and oversight mechanisms for the department's use of CCTV technology. So NYCHA's current network of CCTV video systems includes more than 20,000 cameras across indoor, outdoor common spaces like entryways, hallways, laundry rooms, lobbies, and courtyard areas. The NYPD also operates its own separate system of cameras at some NYCHA properties, which it could access remotely before Big Apple Connect. So another part in this article that was also spoken about was that they would need a warrant from a judge in order to be able to access these. Because essentially you're being invasive into people's living quarters. And my thing is, where's the line? Because they could continue this even further. What if the local police department also has access to your Ring account and they don't need to get access to it from a judge? You know? And it could be for crimes that you didn't commit, or rather, I should say, crimes that they created or things that were legal, but they made into it being illegal. And now they're trying to tag you for it because they want to take you in because you're fighting against the system. And even though you're doing it in a moral and ethical way, to them, that's still a threat to the system. So I think, we got to be careful. We got to take a look at what our city's doing. Our locales are doing, because I think it's also really important for us to keep in mind that what they're trying to do now is, it's not only cop cities that they're trying to do this. They're also trying to do more mass surveillance. And this is just further extension of a police state that will stifle whatever type of actions we want to do in order to change the system. And if things go down, if you have mass surveillance, you got an iRobot. Anybody remember that movie? Where everybody was being monitored by who? Vicky, remember? And she took over the city. Well, imagine that, but it's being done by the corporate parasites that own our government. And they'll say their logic is undeniable. But that's just folly, because it is. But stay vigilant. Keep your head on the swivel. Let's continue to fight against this system and keep our eyes on what they're doing behind our backs. All right, go ahead and give a like to the stream, folks. Thank you so very much. Going to give a shout out to the patrons, and then we will get into the chats. I know y'all got a lot to say. I haven't went to the chat in a bit, so we'll get into that. Let me check to see if we have any Rumble rants. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. That's good. Let me check to see if we have any gift subs from Kick. Nope. All right. And did you guys answer that question? I want to know you guys' thoughts on that in regards to Donald Trump. All right, so let's go into shout outs. Thank you so very much to the patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not exist. But because of you guys, we do. So here are the tiers. We have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We have Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And to all future members, thank you so very much to all of you for becoming a part of this community and supporting it. Thank you so very much. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt channel is also demonetized. So if you like to, you can support via Patreon or PayPal as well. Thank you. All right, everybody. Let's get into the chat. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Okay, this is crazy. Robert says that slurred speech at the beginning. Kat says, I physically slapped my forehead at that Rocket City name change. Like, what? That was crazy, man. Unemployed Scholar says, Uhuru movement has a presence in Huntsville. Interesting. I'm going to have to look into that. Ivan says, no way this is real. Right? I was just like, when he said it, I was like, Space Force? You talking about this bullshit again? What? My goodness. Okay. Jay said, dude's a comedian. Yeah. Yeah. I felt like we were being trolled. Hey, Travels. Well, good to see you. All right. Yeah, right. So Calla says head scratcher for sure. CBC voter says I'm from Canada. Why are me is propaganda then? Oh my goodness. Human Rights for All says what I'm seeing. He wants to poison more humans. Yeah, because I mean, if you're sending rockets constantly, that can also have an effect on the air quality in a given area. And that whole Golden Dome thing, like what? He says they want to do Golden Dome. There's means a missile defense system there, right? Yeah, it sounds like he looked at Israel and said, "Oh, you guys have an Iron Dome. We're going to do a Golden Dome." You fool! Gold is softer than iron. Like if you did, oh, we're going to do a steel dome, or we're going to do a diamond dome or platinum dome or something like that. But gold is softer than steel and than iron. What the hell are you talking about? Like his head is so far up his ass that he is looking at a space-time continuum in his sphincter. Like, what in the heck? we went from a evil and conniving president in Obama that played the politicians so well to two cartoonishly evil politicians that are suffering brain rot. One blue and one red. Well, technically orange. It's wild. Like, what in the hell? I don't know. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Jesus Christ. Good to see you, Holly Horn. I got nothing. I got nothing. All right. Radical education said Trump is a hellhole. I would say the same thing, but I don't want to be an insult. I don't want to insult hellholes. The one from BK says, what in the world? Yeah, right. That Trump got me stumped with that one. Holly Horn said his handler should have shut him up. That comment about born to be criminals. I understand now why Trump is all in on genocide. Yeah. Because I'm gonna be honest with you. He's talking about Baltimore, a black city. Oh, they're born to be criminals. He sounds like Joe Biden. You'd be surprised how much Donald Trump and Joe Biden actually agree on a lot. You'd be surprised. Quite a bit. So basically, he just did his super predators comment. Talking about they're born to be criminals. That's what he's talking about. The black Americans who voted for either Harris or Trump, y'all gotta leave both parties, man. Neither one really cares about us at all. They don't give a damn. Like, and here's my thing, even from a black American freedman perspective, right? And of course, it's not going to be a silver bullet. It isn't. Hell, socialism is not a silver bullet. But just think about reparations for a second. And how poverty and crime have a very close link. If reparations was actually paid, if cash reparations was actually paid to freedmen in places like Baltimore, do you think the crime would stay high? Reparations for freedmen is actually a public safety policy. I don't think anybody's ever thought about it that way, but it is actually a public safety policy. And it actually helps ensure public safety because when people are not suffering under poverty, they're less likely to commit crimes of desperation and lack of opportunity. Because the desperation and lack of opportunity comes from generational debt, generational disenfranchisement, which happens to Black people, which has happened to us for hundreds of years. So why not? You will literally be lowering the crime rate by paying what you owe to Black Americans. I'm just saying. And yes, Holly, his handler should have shut him up. But you know, Big Mouth Don doesn't know how to shut up. Roger says, woke, not woke, able to lift the gun out of the holster. Come on, JB. You know how serious you have to try to be. You can't help UT to laugh. You need to laugh. I think it's you meant. Here's the thing. As somebody that is actually on the left, that's an actual left, trust me, the left fully believes in we fully believe in our Second Amendment rights. He's talking about liberals. He's not talking about the left. He's talking about the radical left. Baby. Look, Donald Trump wouldn't know the left if he was doing the cha-cha slide. He wouldn't know what the left is if the dude on the song said, to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't know what the left was if he heard Beyonce say, to the left, to the left. And he would not know what the left is if he slapped himself with his left hand. The one that's bruised. He wouldn't know. My goodness, y'all. Anyway, Jeanette says, "You such a pathological liar. I bet you used to watch that character. You used to watch that character on SNL." Jeez Louise, man. Jacqueline says, "Seems like he comes up with these draconian policies such as predictive policing, but they need an incident to get people on board." Sorry if that sounds conspiracy theorist. No, it was Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld under the Bush administration that said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Donald Rumsfeld said that. So, yeah, just think about it. Whenever we have a big crisis, think about how they're not letting it go to waste. Edward says, "The sign of empire is when the dollar value goes down, where the elites continue to rob from the poor, and since the economy is failing, they feel nostalgic about creating more wars." Yeah. All right, so let's go to, yeah, Rondo says Biden and Trump are the same thing. Let's go to I know Roger said he has something in the DM. Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you for this, Roger. Says, although I do feel that the whole Cold War thing contributed to a booming middle class. However, the main reason why it was booming was mainly because we were the only country standing after World War II. That is also true. So there was no other country to outsource our manufacturing to. So they had to deal with the unions here in this country, which was backed by organized crime. So interwoven into the fabric of the unions that they would do the things that the unions weren't allowed to do. Also, having laws that were worker anti-corporate friendly. Hey, we're not going to say multipolar world. We're going to say cooperative world. We got our own lingo here on independent media, baby. Who are you calling baby, Roger? Nobody puts baby in a quarter. Sorry, I had to. I couldn't resist. Says China's history of relaxed environmental policies to promote rapid industrialization have led to severe consequences, including widespread pollution, extensive land and water degradation, and critical public health issues. Although the government has adopted stronger regulations in recent years, decades of prioritizing economic expansion over environmental protection have caused lasting damage. Talks about air pollution, water contamination, scarcity. Waste management. China says rapid created enormous amounts of waste. The country's national sword policy restricted the import of recyclable plastic scrap. disrupting the global trade and straining economic ecosystem in developing nations that took the increased waste. International impact, this through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has financed coal-fired power plants and other high-emission infrastructure projects of the countries, increased greenhouse gas emissions in more than a dozen BRI countries, potentially undermining global climate change goals. Social and economic consequences, public health crisis, economic burden, later policy changes and conflicting incentives. In 2010s, facing growing public pressure and a visible environmental crisis, China began implementing stricter environmental policies. However, some issues have persisted. Conflicting priorities. There has been continuing tension between supporting the economy in a short-term and a long-term goal of green development. This has been particularly evident at the local government. At the local government level, where officials have often prioritized economic targets over environmental concerns. And then China's decentralized power structure has made it difficult to enforce environmental policies consistently throughout the country. A race to the bottom has sometimes occurred, with local governments relaxing environmental standards to attract investment. So, understood. They still have work to do. Says, however, the effect it had on labor, quite the opposite. Now, the thing is that one thing I do know is that they have actually strengthened unionization as far as their and their worker protections. They have definitely did that. Unfortunately, there are some outlets in the West that would say otherwise. But we have to be very careful and take with a grain of salt what a lot of Western outlets will say in regards to what China is doing, because a lot of times they'll do that to undermine so that people can point to China and say, oh, well, you know, the economic system that they're under doesn't work, when in reality, it's working better than the United States. In fact, they're, you know, as far as the standard of living is actually went up. But the problem is that the United States doesn't want China to look positive in that way, because they actually have lifted up the standard of living. And so it also has to be important as far as because everywhere you go, you're going to find a source that's going to be skewed in one way or another. So it's really important to take the aggregate of all different views and be able to distinguish, you know, and kind of test them against one another to see where the truth is. And also, unfortunately, a lot of times those of us in the West, we have what we think in our minds how things should be. And we're coming at it from a Western mental perspective, whereas they don't have that same perspective. And they may have done something that was not environmentally safe in the past because they were following the trend that was going on at the time, but then they adapted and then they fixed it, and now they're continuing in a more environmentally friendly way. Versus the United States is now trying to revert back to, like, for instance, Donald Trump's like, oh, we're going to do clean coal, right? So we had, you know, China does have some things that I do disagree with them on. But at the same time, are they doing better for their people than the United States? I think so too. All right, so let's get into the final segment. Oh gosh, I'm just realizing this stream is going to be a pain in the behind to edit. I'm gonna be busy tonight. All right, let's get into the next one. All right, folks. let's talk about pollution. Hazardous chemicals. Where is this city? That's the city of St. Louis, Missouri. And I have family out there. And this is of a interesting, and this really just interests me because this is not only happening to somebody, family that I know who are around this, but also Black people within St. Louis that this is affecting. So I really want to get into this as well, because this is a really important subject to cover. And I think that we need to come to terms with what the U.S. is doing to Black people within the imperial core, because a lot of times people will just say, oh, we got to just focus on class only and not on race. But the thing is, like, when you do that, you miss that they're doing this to people like us. And this is intentional rather than just an accident and neglect. So let's get into this. In the past, in the United States, there has been experimentation that has happened to the Black community that has resulted in many health problems that have happened to us in the past, that has affected us even down to this day. You had experimentation from who they call like the father of gynecology, that has tested on Black females in order to figure out the female body. He's done it with female enslaved Africans who are our ancestors, who were experimented on without anesthesia. You have experiments that were done on people in prison, particularly Black men incarcerated in prison, and they underwent experimentation and without compensation for that experimentation on them, which have left their bodies damaged. We also have the famous Tuskegee experiments that were done on the people of Tuskegee, and how they were told that they were being treated for syphilis, but then they weren't being treated. And this has resulted in them leading lives of physical deterioration because of these Tuskegee experiments, really because the US government just wanted to see the effects. And they did it with people not knowing what they were going through, not knowing that the United States was experimenting on them for negative effects. We see it institutionally in this country, where they have actually took the cells of Henrietta Lacks and have used her cells in testing for many different types of ailments, but compensation was never given to the family of Henrietta Lacks. I talked about that last year. But now we have something new. And what has happened in St. Louis, Missouri is nothing short of outrage-inducing. Chemical experiments on Black people in Missouri. Let's get into this, because this is really important. And everyone should be outraged at this. And I want people to share this with everyone they know, because it could be happening in our city today, or it could be happening, it could have happened, a few years ago, and we may still be experiencing the effects of it now.
The fog drifted through the streets like a ghost.
That's exactly what it looked like, a thick fog. It was summertime, it was hot. We would just run through it as fast as we could and try to just cool ourselves off. It stuck to you.
The spray was so foul as far as the odor. It made some of us have headaches, nausea, dizziness.
That's what I remember. It made me sick.
It wasn't the weather. It was an eerie smoke descending from rooftops, rolling from the backs of trucks.
Regular flatbed truck, but it had a big machine on the back. And it had a big nozzle that really sprayed a fog you couldn't even see through. It was that thick. And it really, we felt it as it would adhere to our skin. And as far as the guys on top of the buildings, they tried to portray them to us as maintenance workers. But we was like, what is a maintenance worker doing? And basically a hazmat suit. And
that's how you know something's wrong. If somebody's a maintenance worker and they got a hazmat suit, my first sign is get out of Dodge. But when you're economically displaced, can you do that? No. And a lot of times people will say, well, just move to a different area. Well, in the period that we're talking about, there was a lot of redlining, so you can only move to so many different areas. So essentially, you were trapped, as we'll see. This is crazy. But this is what the United States has done to Black people, particularly to freedmen. And we got to talk about it because the thing is like, history is not comfortable, but it is necessary to know in order so that we do not repeat the sins of the past. But if they're not going to talk about it, then they're going to repeat it. It is our job to make sure that it doesn't get repeated. This is why we need to keep speaking out. Let's continue on.
And they had masks and goggles.
In the 1950s and 60s, in secret, the U.S. Army sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide into the air of a St. Louis housing project, a largely Black neighborhood called Pruitt-Igoe.
It was a lose-lose situation for us in Pruitt-Igoe. We were subjects.
They didn't ask for our permission. We didn't ask for them to spray us. My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
We're standing at where Pruitt-Igoe used to be here in St. Louis, and it's hard to believe more than 10,000 people used to live here. As we bring our drone up, you can see it's mostly just an empty lot now, overgrown with trees. This used to be filled with 33 high-rise buildings. It was all demolished in 1976. And according to the National Research Council, St. Louis was chosen for spraying experiments because it had similar characteristics to Soviet targets like Moscow in terms of population density and terrain and proximity to a river.
So this was also part of the Cold War. Experimenting on Black Americans in order to test to see how badly it would affect the Soviets. What does this remind you of? What did they say about Palestine? It's the testing ground for what? What they want to do here at home? Guess what? We were also the testing ground of what they could do abroad. Sometimes people will say, well, oh man, this stuff that the United States is doing is going to come back home. Baby, it originated here and we were the subjects. Our ancestors were the subjects. Also, by the way, let me ask you something. And maybe this might be my tinfoil hat moment for this particular show. But you remember what happened in Flint, Michigan with the water? About how they had extreme levels of lead in the water. Do you know what lead does to the human body? It also, one of the things that lead does is that it causes, especially in children, for the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for judgment, right? And impulse control, it damages it so it doesn't develop fully. Also, it also affects parts of the brain where things like anger and emotions are controlled. Therefore, making people more violent. One would think that you would want to get that lead out of that water and fix those pipes and put the water back the way it was as quickly as possible, expeditiously. But yet they didn't. They were very slow to rebuild it. And it's still not fully back to the way it's supposed to be. Almost as if the United States said, hold on, wait a minute. We know exactly what lead does. Let it ride. And the prison industrial complex, especially those private prison corporations, like, wait. Don't fix it just yet. Do it slowly. How many kids failed the state exam in the 3rd grade? Okay, we need to build that many more prison beds and cells. All right, let's build it. All right, government, hey, pay us up. We're going to take those kids in, juveniles. And then guess what? It's a feedback loop because they put that in your system. And the thing is, like, they'll do it, and that will have the same effect on any human being. But they do it particularly in what? Black areas. Why? Because guess what? You have people have a preconceived notion of what they think about Black folks in this country. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because the United States, well, what they do is that they'll allow things like this to happen in our communities. And then they go, see, these Black people, they're violent. They can't control themselves. They're ratchet. They're ghetto. They can't take care of themselves. We need more crime prevention. We need more police in these areas. We need to send the National Guard. Meanwhile, they're poisoned. And so as you can see, what's happening in places like St. Louis. What do they do here? You have men in hazmat suits spraying chemicals in Black neighborhoods? Let's continue on.
The government now admits to a secretive series of Cold War tests, including one dubbed Large Area Coverage. More than 30 tests conducted across the U.S. and Canada, spraying zinc cadmium sulfide from planes, rooftops, and vehicles to simulate how a biological attack might spread, all to prepare for potential warfare against the Soviets.
Many of us been in the military and had top secret clearances. We know how it works. We have died for America. We have fought for America.
You are a veteran.
I am United States Air Force veteran.
Dr. Starks, you're a veteran as well, isn't
Yes, I am. I'm an Air Force veteran also.
Is there a sense of betrayal here?
Definitely.
They want to know if those secret tests have anything to do with what they're observing with their own eyes.
I lost my 2 older siblings to cancer. I lost a brother last month.
I've been diagnosed recently with a rare form of lymphoma.
I had cancer of the left kidney, had partial removal of my left kidney.
News Nation.
And people, and they refuse to give us universal health care. Why? It is well documented that they refuse to give us universal health care because of white supremacy, because they want to make sure that we died off. Hell, Tom Hartman actually talked about that. And so when we talk about when Black people talk about that they don't trust the healthcare system, when Black people talk about they don't trust the government, here are the material reasons why. Now, some people will look at me and go, well, that's just the government. This is the problem. This is why government has to get out the way. And the problem is that they don't think that who owns our government? Is it us? Oh, because if we actually own our government, then we would be able to make sure things like this don't happen. But no, we don't own our government. It's the corporations. Because who made that gas? Who made those chemicals? Who made them? Who has a profit incentive that they get used and bought by the government? Who has an incentive to treat illnesses but don't cure them? It's the corporations. The corporations are the reason why our government is the way it is, because they, who are the descendants of the robber barons, have and continue to own our government, and they don't do a damn thing because they want to make sure that we stay displaced. And what do you do in order to keep the working class divided? You make one side of the working class just a little bit better than the other. So therefore, there's always hierarchy. Even when it comes to material things like health. And then people will look down at Black people and go, you guys just don't take good care of yourselves. Look at what you eat and things like that. Look, they eat all manners of fat. They eat all manners of carbs. And places like France, they eat rice every damn day with every meal, in places like China and in Japan. And they are thin. And they're healthy for the most part. Why? Is it because they don't eat fried food? Oh, no, they fry. Oh, they fry. But what is it? Oh, it's as if our government is allowing these corporations to mess with the food or have chemicals that are sprayed on us that ends up messing our health up. This is why we're jacked up now. And so when people say, oh, government's the problem, that's like saying guns are the problem. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. By that very notion, if you take you replace bad people who run government with good people who run government. Basically, the bad people who run government are corporations. The good people who run government are workers. That's why you need to have a worker-centered government. But the problem is that the corporations who use the Democrat and Republican parties do not want that. And then now you have all these Black people who have all these different health issues, and some, how many you want to bet that were pregnant at that time that ingested some of those chemicals that it actually harmed their kids? And their kids had to grow up with more difficulties because those chemicals got into their system and altered their biochemistry. And they were considered problem children when they were in school. And then it gave people this preconceived notion that, oh, well, Black kids, they're just unruly. This is why we got to put them in detention and suspend them all the time. This is why we have to have SROs, school resource officers, and all up in our schools just to be able to keep monitoring on them, because they just can't control themselves. When in reality, they're poisoning us, that are affecting our prefrontal cortex, that are affecting the parts of our brain that control emotion and impulse control. And if you injected, or if you put these same agents and chemicals in white children, they would turn out the exact same way. Hell, they're probably doing it in poor white neighborhoods right now. Look at East Palestine. That's mostly white neighborhood. But that was because of a train derailment. You literally have the U.S. Army actually doing an experiment on Black Americans in order to test to see what they could do to a socialist country. Man, I'm telling you.
Reached out to the Army for answers. They provided a one-page response. It says the Army's own Center for Health Promotion and Preventive Medicine investigated in 1994 and found inhalation exposure would not pose a health risk. They also cite later corroborating reviews, including a 1997 review by the National Research Council. Perhaps they assumed we wouldn't read the NRC's 380-page report, but we did, and the Army's statement doesn't show the full picture. In that 1997 review, the National Research Council explicitly says repeated exposure to zinc cadmium sulfide can cause kidney or bone toxicity or lung cancer if levels are high enough. And they admitted they couldn't fully assess the risk. Why? Because some Army records remain classified, it says, for national security reasons. More troubling, key Army exposure records were missing. And when the NRC asked the Army to supply them, the Army said it couldn't find them. Finally, the NRC considered conducting its own study, but concluded it wasn't feasible. In short, it did not test the site, collect samples, or test residents, and they didn't have access to all the data. Their review was based on what the Army gave them, and what the Army either could not find or withheld. The Army ends its statement to News Nation by saying, quote, none of the reports contained evidence of a radioactive component to the zinc cadmium sulfide dispersion tests. Residents say the secrecy and delays are no accident.
They're waiting us out.
They're waiting on all of us to die.
But that's not even the whole story, as residents demand to know what else could have been in that spray.
What that man said was so true. He said they're waiting for all of them to die. This is also what's going on with reparations. They wanted all the slaves to die, so everybody has an excuse to go, well, you're not born a slave, so therefore we can't pay you reparations. When in reality, the effects of intergenerational debt and disenfranchisement continue down to this day. So no, reparations still needs to be paid because of the debt that's owed. And as long as the United States government still exists, it still owes that debt. And they want people to die off so that they can't testify and go, hey, you harmed me. And you don't think that didn't have an effect on your kids? Especially if they affect them medically? What if it was passed down on to them? And also, what if it affected them mentally? You also have to account for that too. Those medical bills, guess what? They also have to, they also have to account for that. All that.
They have not come clean with what was in there.
Do you believe that it was just zinc cadmium sulfide in that spray?
No.
No.
We go to the source, a researcher who has spent decades declassifying government documents about these tests.
Do you believe the U.S. government sprayed some kind of radioactive material on the residents of St. Louis?
I believe that they did. And the government's surprising response to our request to declassify information.
I mean, what the hell?
Plus, renowned activist Aaron Brockovich weighs in.
Do you think there's been a lie here, a cover-up here?
It sure looks that way.
The residents are asking for an apology from the government for being experimented on. They are asking for compensation, for health studies for themselves and their children. They're also asking for transparency. They want the government to release all the documents about the spraying. So, Elizabeth, tomorrow night on your show, we will go on a journey to try to declassify the one government document that a key researcher tells us she has never been able to expose. And we take the investigation to Erin Brockovich. For the residents still here, still fighting, the question is whether they will get any answers before it's too late. Elizabeth.
Well, there.
And yes, they deserve reparations for that. But this is tale as old as time when it comes to Black Americans being experimented on en masse. It's happened to a lot of us. Happened to a lot of our family members. My goodness. And the best way to be able to combat this is to change the system. But the problem is we have to walk away from not just both parties, but we have to change the system on a material fundamental basis. Let's get even deeper into this because there was an article that was also written and it goes just a little bit deeper. And I would like to share that as well. It's funny how people would be like, the government would never. Right. Let me share this. Okay. Says a researcher's request. The mystery might have stayed buried if not for Dr. Lisa Martino Taylor, the sociologist, researcher, and retired faculty member from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, spent decades of her career trying to piece together what happened, combing through thousands of declassified files, pushing for the release of the one that remained secret. It all started, she said, when two people approached her separately, a colleague with breast cancer and a neighbor who had developed a brain tumor. Both told her they had remembered spraying from their childhoods. My neighbor said, I was treated for a brain tumor about a decade ago, and I think it was related to something that happened to me when I was little. And I said, well, what was that? And she said, I was sprayed on the playground at a school in St. Louis. And I thought, how can this be? These two people don't know each other, and they were coming to me days apart with the same strange story. At first, I didn't believe it. I thought, this is just really difficult for me to believe. Martino Taylor promised she looked into it anyway, and when she began digging, the paper trail stunned her. What the military had told people, at least officials in St. Louis, was that they were going to conceal these cities under a cloud in case of Soviet attack. That was just sort of a veneer, a cover story, if you will. They were not at all telling the truth about what they were actually doing and what they were doing it and why they were doing it. She believes it was part of a much larger coordinated study that the Army Chemical Corps were responsible for that involved the production and testing of radiological weapons. Martino Taylor said her research reveals the very men who designed the St. Louis test were experts in radiological warfare. Brigadier General William Creasy led the Army Chemical Corps and branch leading America's secret radiological weapons program during the Cold War. He brought Philip Layton, his top chemist, who was the Army's leading authority on using radioactive particles in aerosol form, fog-like clouds designed to drift over enemy terrain. So there he is. Says, yes, he was the expert. So Martino Taylor's work revealed chilling details from that area when the U.S. government conducted human experiments on its own people in the name of preparing for the Soviet threat. American children in state-run institutions like the Fernald School were fed radioactive oatmeal as part of a studies by MIT sponsored by the Atomic Energy Commission. Children were fed radioactive oatmeal. children. What? This is evil. And people think about like what's going on in Gaza right now and saying how the United States is willing to fund it. Just think about the history of the United States. The United States literally has a history of genocide on this land and kidnapping and genociding Black Americans as well as Native Americans. Would it be that far of a jump? Would that be that far of a leap for them to test unethically on children without anybody knowing? Or at least without parents and community members knowing? Let's continue. The children, some of them orphans, were told they joined a science club and were promised a quart of milk a day, a trip to a baseball game, a trip to a beach. A copy of the 1994 congressional hearing shows that those children, now grown, describing being told that oatmeal was just vitamins and recalling the health problems that followed: lumps in my arms, my stomach. God. Says pregnant women were also unknowingly given radioactive iron at top hospitals in Tennessee and California to study how radiation crossed the placenta. Some later reported miscarriage, illness, or birth defects. A class action lawsuit resulted in a settlement in the 1990s. We know that they were giving radioactive cocktails to pregnant women. We know that they were feeding radioactive oatmeal to children in state schools. They've admitted to those things, and they won't release the material related to St. Louis. Oh my gosh. Martino Taylor worked to declassify previously hidden documents, including Army records, and synthesize public records and articles related to the era of U.S. government testing. That was one of the things that really stood out to me in all of the radiological weapons experiments, that they were layers of secrecy. It was an offshoot of the atomic bomb project. And a lot of the people who were working in the early formation of the radiological weapons experiment were involved in the atomic bomb project. It was a 4-pronged program. They wanted to do ingestion, inhalation, injection, and full body scan on humans. As she went deeper, she said she almost needed to adopt the lexicon of a code breaker. The language was purposely veiled and obfuscated. Oh my gosh. What was sprayed in St. Louis? When she asked if she believes the U.S. government sprayed some kind of radioactive material on the residents of St. Louis, Martino Taylor answered plainly, "I believe if they did, there's so much contextual evidence that points that way." She examined who was involved in the development of St. Louis tests and found Creasy and Lighton. For Lighton's part, in addition to his role at St. Louis spraying test, he was also the director of operations at Dugway Proving Ground, a remote secretive facility in Utah. Used to be the Army to test chemical and radioactive materials. It was the Army Chemical Corps' main site for experiments with chemical and radiological weapons, including open-air releases to show how they spread. Martino Taylor was disturbed to find out not only about Layton's dual role, but also evidence that data from St. Louis was gathered and then directly compared with Dugway Proving Ground. And since in 1952, they were looking for a city to test their offensive weapons program. They wanted to do it. They expressed this in documents. St. Louis was their chosen city. That was their analog city to Moscow. They wanted to do this in 1953. They showed up in 1953 in St. Louis. I'm telling you right now, some of these people are my uncle's age. 1953? Yeah, my uncle's age, around my mom's age. These people are in their 70s. Maybe some of these people are in their 80s. If you were a kid in 1953, and then you think, if that was your parents or your grandmother or grandfather, and then they died prematurely from health complications, could it have been from these experiments that they had no idea that was done to them? And what if you lost that family member? Shouldn't you be compensated materially for, wrongful death by the government? What did the Army know? The substance the Army admit to spraying is a chemical called zinc cadmium sulfide, which contains cadmium, now known to be a human carcinogen. But did the designers of the study know at the time that the chemical they were using to fog more than 10,000 Americans could be harmful to their health? Martino Taylor said that she believes they did. Philip Lighton was very well aware that cadmium was problematic. Using cadmium sulfide was toxic, and he was open about that. Even at the time, they knew this was toxic. So they knew all this. And now they're supposed to be fighting. They spoke to Wesley Bell, the Zionist lapdog. Says when American citizens have been impacted and exposed to chemicals specifically because of the federal government, I think that we should, as Democrats or Republicans, we should do the right thing and make certain to make these folks whole again, get them the compensation they deserve and the treatment that they need and also deserve. Bell is now fighting to get Pruitt-Igoe residents included in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. But these residents are currently unable to prove radiation exposure, and they say key records that could help clarify that was contained in the spray remain classified or missing. I mean, I'm glad that he's at least putting up a fight for this, but at the same time, he can't be bothered to call, for a weapons embargo to stop what's going on in Palestine. Yeah. This is very disturbing. And if you're outraged by this, I'm glad. Because many of us in the Black community have been hearing about stuff like this all the time. This is also why a lot of Black people believe about this talk about chemtrails. I remember being young, 8, 9, 10 years old, playing outside in the apartment complex. And I would see way up in the sky, and I would see a plane, and I would see it blowing clouds out the back. And I would see it, and I didn't think much of it. Or sometimes I would wake up in the morning, and I would see these lines in the sky crisscrossed over my neighborhood. And then next thing you know, you wouldn't think about it ever again. Hell, even Prince talked about this. Prince. He talked about this with Tavis Smiley about chemtrails. How he said that He saw these planes fly in the sky, letting out these agents, and then next thing you know, in a few hours, everybody would be pissed off and angry at each other. Like something happened. What was it? Oh my God, the comedian activist name. I'm blanking on his name. Oh my gosh. He talked about manganese. If any of you guys know, please help me out. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. He was a comedian and activist. But he talked about the chemicals that would be released in the Black community. And so this is the side of the US government that a lot of people don't know. And we talk about this stuff all the time in the Black community because we live it. Dick Gregory, yes. It was Dick Gregory that talked about that. The manganese, yep. And this is why it's so important for us to change this system, because we should not have a system where they try to test us against our will, against our consent. And this is all for warfare. This wasn't to improve our health. This was all for warfare. This is why the military-industrial complex just doesn't affect soldiers. It affects citizens. It affects us. This is why this system needs to go. Because ending this capitalist system will also provide liberation for American freedmen and everyone else in this country who are Black, brown, and any other marginalized group in this country. It will provide liberation for all of us because we got to get rid of it. Toss it all out. Share, this information with family, with friends. Let them know, because this has to stop. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody. All right, now let's get into the chat. See if I have any Rumble rants. Okay, we're good on the Rumble side. And we're trying to get more people to watch either on Rumble or on Kick. I'm trying to my goal is to get to 500 subs on both. So if we can get to 500 subs on Rumble and Kick, I don't know. I don't know. I may make a fool of myself for y'all. Thank you so very much. But thank you. All right. Let's get into this. All right. I can start here. What's this? Gotcha. All right, let's do this first, and then we'll go into the rest of the chat. So Roger said, did you say Missouri? Yes, I said Missouri. What about it? Roger, if that's your real name. I'm just kidding. Roger sent me this. He said, laws governing the initiative process in Missouri. So this is about ballot initiatives. Citizens of Missouri may initiate legislation as either a state statute or a constitutional amendment. In Missouri, citizens also have the power to repeal legislation via veto referendum. The Missouri General Assembly may also place measures on the ballot as legislatively referred ballot. Hang on. Okay. And he says, why wait for the feds when you can do it yourself? So let me share this. Yeah, he said, do it yourself. Kind of like Patti LaBelle. On my own, once again. Anyway, he said, yes, in principle, the surplus generated by state public bank could potentially be used to help finance state single-payer healthcare program. Here's why. Public bank profits, public banks being owned by the state, operate with the goal of serving the public interest rather than maximizing shareholder profits. When they generate a surplus profit from their operations, like lending money or investing state deposits, those funds belong to the state. State funding for healthcare, single-payer healthcare system, are typically financed through public funds, often generated through taxes or other government revenue streams. If a state decides to establish and operate public bank, its surplus it generates becomes another potential source of revenue for the state to allocate to its various programs and services, including healthcare. However, several important factors need to be considered: legislation and regulation. States considered such an approach would need to establish legal frameworks that allow for the creation and operation of public bank and explicitly define how its profits could be used. These regulations would need to address the bank's mission, governance, investment policies, and how any surplus would be distributed or reinvested within the state. Financial stability and risk management. Public banks, like any financial institution, carry inherent risks. Before diverting funds to other programs, the state would need to ensure the bank's financial stability and establish sound risk management practices to protect the principal investment and ensure long-term sustainability. Potential competing priorities. A state might have other priorities for its public bank surplus, such as infrastructure development, education funding, or addressing other social programs. Decisions about how to allocate these funds would likely involve political debate and depend on the state's specific needs and priorities. Impact on existing financial institutions. Introducing a public bank into the state's financial landscape could impact existing private banks and credit unions. State governments would need to carefully consider the potential impact and explore ways to foster collaboration rather than competition between public and private financial institutions. In short, ultimately, the feasibility of using a public bank surplus to finance the state single-payer healthcare program depends on a complex interplay of legal, economic, political, and state social factors specific to each state. So, yeah. Thank you very much for that, Roger. Here in Orange County, our county actually banks with Wells Fargo. So if we had a municipal public bank in Orange County, we would essentially be taking our money out of Wells Fargo, which I am all for. He said, make that part of its own ballot measure, since Missouri is a state with a single subject rule when it comes to citizen ballot measures. After that, run a health initiative that has the following. The removing of hospitals, rehab centers, nursing homes, dialysis centers, clinics, and any other medical institution and facility you could think of from the speculative market. You see, James, one of the reasons why politicians don't want to do single-payer healthcare is because it will shift the cost burden from individuals to the government, which they would be responsible for figuring out how to pay for it. We can't have single-payer healthcare but still have high cost. You have to make it cheaper on both sides for the government and the individual, and that's how you do it. Repeat number one with private health insurance companies. Expand, invest at all the public universities across the state to invest research and development for life-saving pharmaceutical drugs. This way, when there's breakthrough, it can be given to the public for free, and yes, free, because the tax dollars was what was used to invest in it. We want free. We want to return to our public investment. 4, single-payer healthcare. 5, Missouri State Fitness Program. That would keep Missourians in shape. What are you trying to say about people in Missouri, Roger? You trying to start something? Like Michael Jackson? Want to be started something? Yeah, what happens when everyone gets a government state card in the mail that acts as a debit card to be used to take classes on and engage in activities that keep the body healthy yoga, Pilates. I mean, of course, you want to be in the back of a Pilates class, Roger. I see you. You ain't fooling me. I was born at night, but not last night. You go to the class, and the instructor takes the card, goes to a government website, punches in the number on your card, downloads payment. Now class begins. It'll be a boom to business. When it comes to food, anything that is not allowed in the food in Russia and Canada, it shouldn't be allowed in the food in Missouri. Yeah. So just like I always say, people may not move when you want them to move in the direction that you wish for them to move to the speed at which you wish they would, but show them grace and give it some time, and eventually they will. James, you echoed what I've been saying that has been counter to what most independent media have been saying when they say what they do in other countries will eventually come here. I always say, no, we are the guinea pigs. It started here, and they started here, then take it abroad. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, for instance, even in the Holocaust in Germany, that started here. Like, all those things that Hitler did, it started here. The guinea pigs for all this were the Native Americans and Black Americans and enslaved Africans. Basically, we were the guinea pigs, and we were the start of what happened and what they continue to do in the Holocaust in Germany. And it wasn't just against people who are Jewish, it was also against people who were communists, socialists, trade unionists that were in Germany, that were German, that probably had the blonde hair and blue eyes, but because they saw that it was wrong what the Nazi Party was doing, they were also persecuted. They also went after people who were disabled. They were some of the first to go. It was also against LGBTQ people. One of the first researchers for people who actually researched about when it came to medical procedures for people who were trans and things like that, was a doctor in Germany, and they burned his books. Also, Jehovah's Witnesses were also deeply affected. They actually gave them the purple triangle because that particular religious group, which I used to be one, they were persecuted for resisting what the Nazis were doing. So yes, Jehovah's Witnesses too. And so the problem is that people don't know that. But the problem is that it always starts somewhere. And the thing is, it started here because Hitler learned everything he did in Germany from the United States. So the blueprint was this country. A lot of people don't realize that, man. He was a big fan of a lot of our presidents. Fire Repo says, JB, let's reach out to Aaron Brockovich. Look, I would be thrilled to get Aaron Brockovich, but I do not have her contact information. I would love to be able to have her on. If I can get my hands on Aaron Brockovich's contact info and get her on, hey, let's do it. I mean, because here's the thing, it's about human rights, and talking to somebody that's on the front lines of that, as far as the human rights through the legal process, I think that'd be great to talk to. Robert says, self-fulfilling talking points. I'm so frustrated and angry. Every time I learn something new about the U.S., the amount of energy in the cover-up scares me. Yeah, but the thing is that they do that so that you don't become outraged and don't have to fire it within you to change the system. Yes, you're angry and you're frustrated. Yes. At the same time, your frustration and anger is actually a good thing because, number one, it means you're a human being with compassion. Number two, that means you can focus that energy into doing material good for your neighbors by doing things like mutual aid and building dual power. Use the energy of the frustration and anger to your benefit for the people. Anger is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful tool. Use it. Because here's the thing. I used to be one of... All right, hang on. I'll get back to you. I'm going to explain, Robert. I used to be one of those people who was scared of being angry. I was so afraid of being angry and confrontation. But I realized that anger is an emotion that happens when correction needs to happen, but no effort has been made, or the efforts have been exhausted. And so that is where anger is. And anger can be a good thing in driving for actual correction to take place. And this is why I think it's important that it's okay to be angry, but how you use that anger also matters. Use that anger as a weapon for love, right? As a weapon against exploitation, against, against bigotry, against this parasitic system. Use it to liberate. We just got to use our anger. Jeanette says, somebody get them to WikiLeaks. Get it all to WikiLeaks. Yup. Mm-hmm. Sheila says, JB, I don't believe it. Sometimes we don't want to, but this is what they do. Jeanette says, stop enlisting and encouraging your kids to enlist. It is not heroic or fighting for our freedoms, aka freedoms, John Trudell. It is killing, maiming, and poisoning everyone in human and non-human and environment. Yeah, if you are either in the military or thinking about getting into the military, do not do it. If you're in the military, get out. Get out, get out, get out. If you could try to do it through like an honorable discharge so you can maintain your benefits, then fine. But do whatever you can to get out of that military safely. Okay? And encourage your people around you to do it too. If you're thinking about going into the military, if you're a young person especially, if you die for your country, you're not dying for your country. You're not serving your country. You're serving corporations. You're serving shareholders that do not give a damn about you or the people who you're trying to serve. Do not give them the benefit of your sacrifice. They are not worth it. Do not throw your pearls before swine. Okay? Please, please. Do not allow them. Do not die for a rich man's war. Because that's who they are. They just want to make money off your body and then toss it to the side. And they'll do the same thing to your loved ones. Thank you very much for that, Jeanette. Let's continue here. Kat says, by the way, there is cadmium in most dark chocolate. So it doesn't matter if it's organic. Yeah, the problem is that I think it depends on the levels, because there's, you can have too much of a good thing, right? Like, I didn't know this until a few years ago, but you can actually die from vitamin poisoning. Oh, yeah. You can die from vitamin poisoning because you have too much of a good thing. So this is why, like, for instance, the air we breathe, it's only 21% oxygen. Only 21% of the air around you is oxygen. The rest is other things, a huge chunk of which is not actually nitrogen. So even the air you breathe is not pure oxygen. So, this is why there's a certain balance you have to have. Aaron says, insane. I lived in St. Louis and I had no idea about this. Yeah, I had a family member that was living in St. Louis. I still have a family member that lives in St. Louis. Steele said RFK Jr. made his law career on suing USA government-sponsored science experiment abuses on disenfranchised Black, Latina, and Asian and poor white communities. Yeah. Core Commander says we're going to have to do cloud seeding and weather manipulation because capitalism has melted the ice caps. Once the ice is gone, our atmosphere will go bye-bye, and then all water molecules will evaporate. The problem is that if we don't do it the right way, because the road to hell is paved with good intentions, we could end up harming ourselves even further if it's not done the right way. That's just like people saying, oh, we got to plant trees, and they plant just trees like anywhere, but it doesn't go according to the natural biodiversity within a given area. And they just plant trees. And the thing is, like, and then they wonder, it's like, well, wait, why isn't this growing the way it should? It's not growing much at all because you didn't go according to the actual natural biodiversity of an area. This is why we need to pay attention to the Native Americans and the indigenous peoples within that land and ask them, how do we make this right again? How do we correct it? Because they have the ancient knowledge that's been passed down. This is why I need to get that book, Blading Sweetgrass, because this is part of why it is so important that not only we it's why we can't just plant trees, right? This is why we can't just cloud seed, right? We actually would have to go according to the biodiversity along with the area, because I could say, look, you asked me to put gas in the car, I'll put gas in the car. But once you realize I put diesel fuel in the car, I put gas, but I put the wrong kind. You know what I mean? What happens now? Now that, that car has to be fixed because it can't use diesel fuel. So that's the problem, right? We have to be very careful about the particular balance in nature. Some people think that we just need to plant trees, and it's like, no, we have to know which trees to plant, where they should be planted, what time of the year they should be planted, around which plants they should be planted, so on and so forth. Oh yeah, Kat says Jordan Sheridan from Status 2 got her to write the foreword in his book. If you're in contact with him, he might be able to help. I think I'll reach out to Jordan. I actually have to have him back on. Roger says, James, you said you have family in Missouri. Damn, getting in contact with Aaron. Get in contact with your relatives and run them CBI amendments. I have one family member, and yeah. Yeah, they're a little young right now. So but hopefully got to gain contact with them. Robbie Burns says long stream. Actually, no, if you got here at 3, then it's pretty standard. But I started at 2. Actually, I typically go this long. But yeah. So for me, technically, it's not a long stream. I'm trying to shorten them though, because I'm too long-winded. I talk too much. I guess I am actually in the right business. Maybe I should start doing just like 4-hour streams, just like as a standard. Anyway, but with that being said, guys, if you have not, please subscribe to my Kick channel. I'm trying to get to 500 subs. I'm also monetized on there, so that also definitely helped me out a lot. Also, guys, just to let you know, I'm also I'm also on Rumble. If you guys would like to, you guys can also subscribe to my Rumble channel, because I'm also trying to get to 500 subs on there too. I'm much closer to 500 subs on Rumble than I am on Kick, but I would like to get those, because this, it can definitely help me out, and it can definitely help me to be able to support myself in the channel. So I'm at 313 followers on Rumble. So I actually have, not that much to go as far as getting to 500. So if you guys can, that'd be great. All right, Rippo, I just put the Kick in the chat. Yeah, I put the Kick in the chat already. All right, so what? Let me see. Do I have a guest tomorrow? I'm sorry, not tomorrow. Let me take a look at my schedule. What do I have coming up next? Oh, wow. Next Sunday is a lunar eclipse. Cool. All right. Okay. So guests are TBD for now. And Thursday is the Savvy and JB show. So we will be having a conversation then. And also, just to let you guys know, I appreciate all of you for being here. Oh, let me make sure. Did you guys answer the question? What did you think Trump's announcement was going to be originally about? Like, what did you think it was? Because I thought it was going to be about in regard to his health. I thought that's what he was going to address, but apparently it wasn't. I was in the impression that he was just going to come on and say, no, I'm fine. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I've never been any healthier, blah, 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 blah. But I thought he was going to go into that. But instead, it was about space program and moving it to Huntsville, which is kind of weird. Robert says emergency announcement could mean anything. Fire Ripple said, I thought it would be stupid and worthless. He didn't disappoint. Oh, man. Oh, my gosh. That is funny. Yeah, it's quite funny how it's quite funny how they do that. Let's see. I'm trying to see something. I wanted to end with a particular video, but I'm not sure if I could have swore. I guess not. There's a video I found that I absolutely loved, and I could have swore I had it, but I guess not. I hate when that happens. Oh wait, You here? No. No. Let me see something. I wonder. Well, I guess not. I feel bad. I really want to see that. Oh well. But anyway, we're going to head out because I need to go. Plus, my brother is hungry. All right, guys. So we're headed out. What am I going to have for dinner? I made fish last night. I think I had some. Should I have chicken wings? I haven't had chicken wings in a while. I don't know. We'll see. Them chicken wings just sounded really good right now. Anyway, guys, I'll see y'all later. Water your plants. Water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, watching me funny because joy is revolutionary. Like the stream on your way out. And I will see y'all in the next one. And you guys take care. Mwah. Forehead kisses. See y'all in the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.